All right, we are live. Thank you for joining us today. As we continue looking at the origins of Islam, today we will be focusing on the many pagan gods that influenced Islam, that were incorporated into Islam in some sense, and thus the episode is called Islamic MOOnotheism. I'm joined again by Lloyd de Jongh. If you haven't already subscribed to his channel, be sure to do that. Link is in the description box. I'll open us with a word of prayer before we get into the presentation. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time together. We thank you for the technology that allows us to reach fellow believers around the world, but also to reach into the Muslim world, reach into the darkness and provide a light for Muslims who otherwise may never hear what a actual Christian believes, only hearing from people who are involved with Islam what Christians are like. We pray that we are good witnesses for Christ, good witnesses for you. And we pray that anyone who is watching today approach this material with an open mind, that they not simply dismiss what we have to say because they don't like it, but rather take it under consideration, look up the references for themselves, and think about these issues. We know that we have truth on our side, and thus we are not afraid of any challenge. We ask that you guide our discussion today and you prevent us from theological error. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All righty. We see a lot of people are already pouring in. Hello, End Times. Hello, Comment Warrior, XYZ, Chloe, Dodzor. And earlier, I saw Thunderous in the chat, C1 and 9, and a couple others. I apologize if I missed anyone. Thank you all for joining us today, and we'll go ahead and turn it over to Lloyd to start the presentation.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. So, brief summary, I'm going to pick up where I left off previously. I am presenting the evidence for the early pagan, the Babylonian origins of Islam, its foundation, based on the Babylonian pantheon of gods. And I have been tracing the history of Islam through Yemen, through Ethiopia, which I will get to next time. And of course, how the Babylonian influence was very, very strong in Arabia. So you're looking at the same gods of Canaan, the same gods of Babylon, the same gods of Sumer, with those of Arabia. That's slightly different names. We will go through all of the evidence. So we will show that Islam is monotheistic. It is not monotheistic. So it is derived from the moon god. It is based on the moon god Sin. It has a facade of pseudo-biblicism based off of Gnosticism and other heresies. However, we will be talking about this. We'll be tying this all up today, hopefully. And thanks for following along. And please ask your questions in the chat. Looking forward to that. Any comments before I go, Thaddeus?
Just one comment here from Thunderous One. Sounds like Islam has a moonopoly on celestial body-based paganism.
I think he's correct. Yeah, Islam does have a monopoly. Hopefully we're going to show this. We're going to show Muhammad's pagan roots, and we're going to move forward. Now, obviously, this doesn't mean that I believe the standard narrative of Islam, because absolutely I do not. Right? But it's a convenience. It is an easy thing to simply say Muhammad. Whether it was one person, 3 people, a dozen, we don't know. We know that the standard narrative is questionable. However, we need to work along within a framework that we do understand and then utilize this information as a comparison. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and if there's an echo, do let me know. I've got my headphones here in case I need them. So, so to pick up where we left off, okay, so now this is Arthur Jeffrey, a very well-known scholar. And the Quran mentions 2 prophets. It claims were prophets from infancy, right? Of John the Baptist. We're reading Quran 90, verse 13. "O John, take the book with strength." And we gave him al-hukm, which is the prophetic office as a child. Although I would question some of these translations. Be very careful. Hukm comes from the Hebrew hokmah, which means wisdom. And of Jesus, we read in Quran 19:29 that while an infant, he said, I am a servant of Allah. When they use God, they're trying to inveigle themselves as fellow biblical Christians or, Jews, but they're not. So this is Allah. He has given me the book and made me a prophet. Now, as I said, end game here is to show the pagan Babylonian influences within Islam, its foundational influences in paganism. So let's continue. So this Jesus is from the Gospel of the Infancy, which is the Infancy Gospels, and John in the Mandean Gnostic teachings. The Mandeans are known as the Sabians, who are different from the Yemeni Sabians. The Sabians go back a millennium before, 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus, whereas the Mandaeans or the Sabians go back to roughly 2nd, 3rd century. Right, now, Allah says to Muhammad, small typo, in Quran 93, verses 6 and 7, did he not find thee an orphan and give thee shelter, find thee wandering in error and guide thee? Now, the meaning is that he found you in the wrong religion, worshipping falsely. And these words, Dalan and Hada, make it obvious that the reference is to his being found by Allah in a false religion and thus guided. Now, of course, they've tried to change this to saying that he entered his grandfather's home. So I'm covering a little bit of material just to bring everyone up to speed, but we'll soon depart onto new slides and things. Now, notice few details of Muhammad's domestic life with his first wife, Khadija, are preserved to us. But there's this passage in the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, which mentions their evening prayer. A neighbor of theirs tells how he overheard Muhammad saying to his wife Khadija, by Allah, I will not worship Allat nor Al-Uzza. I will not perform worship again. Khadija said, leave Allat and leave Al-Uzza. And the neighbor adds, these were their idols which they used to worship and then go to bed. So we have multiple confirmations that Muhammad was a pagan who worshipped the same gods as the Nabateans did, Manat, Allat, and Al-Uzza. Now, to bring your attention to more conclusive information, here's a confession from Muhammad's own lips. In his younger days, he sacrificed a white ewe to Al-Uzza. This is by Yaqut al-Hamawi, or Hamawi, in the article on Al-Uzza in his geographical dictionary. It has reached us that the Prophet made mention of her, Al-Uzza, one day and said, why? I made an offering of a reddish white ewe to Al-Uzza when I was following the religion of my people, which means they were pagans. They worshipped these pagan goddesses. Any comment, Thaddeus, before I move to the next slides?
Yeah, I think at this point, Muslims would be inclined to agree that Muhammad was a pagan before. But what we're going to see is how these belief systems were incorporated into Islam, that there was not a hard break from Muhammad's previous beliefs.
Correct, that is true. And of course, they do try to imply that Muhammad was a Muslim from birth. And yet we see plenty of evidence. We know that he was consecrated by his grandfather to Hubal, who was the Allah of the Kaaba. So we saw previously he was consecrated to Hubal. Right? Hubal also is he who is Baal. So Baal, just another version of Baal. Now, in Kitabul Bari blah blah blah, al-Maqdisi, okay, the first son that Khadija bore to Muhammad in the Jahiliyyah was named Abd Manaf. We've covered this before. Manaf was a very important idol. We will be coming back to this. So the servant of Manaf, Manaf was the star god, who was the offspring of the moon and the sun. So we'll skip that because I will be coming back to that as we go. So Manaf.
Before you go on real quick, I wanted to add that you raise a good point there. While some Muslims will acknowledge that Muhammad comes from a pagan background, others will say, no, he was specially protected from birth. People saw the mark of prophethood on him when he was a child and so forth. So it's kind
Correct.
of a contradiction in Islam there, that some are saying that he was always a monotheist, he just hadn't received the revelation yet, and others are saying no, he was a normal pagan from his society.
Well, the Sira explicitly state that Muhammad as a child had his body ripped open, had his heart removed, and his intestines cleaned, and so they do claim that he was pure from birth, literally from birth. So here you've got other sources, and in fact, Nawawi, one of the absolute top scholars of Islam, states that Muhammad had two sons who were named after pagan gods. So yeah, there's a serious issue there, and of course, Islam is the one religion where you claim that your sources are either false or unreliable to prove the religion. So
yeah, crazy stuff.
So now Manaf. Manaf is a pre-Islamic god worshipped amongst the Quraysh and other tribes of northwest Arabia. Now, Now, very often in the scholarship, you'll see terms like this. We know little about this deity. Sometimes that is not always true, because this scholar might know little about this deity. Or maybe at that time when that was written, little was known about that deity. Or it could be a Muslim scholar writing it, and it's very convenient for him to know little about that deity. I do find that does occur on a semi-regular basis. So it appears he was an astral deity, and we can confirm he was an astral deity. His idols were located in the Kaaba. Now, notice we have Manaf and Manat. Very unusual. The same name, the names are very similar, just Manaf and Manat. She was an important female deity of the pre-Islamic period, associated with Allat and Al-Uzza. They were the daughters of Allah. And she was very, very ancient. Her name appears in the early Akkadian. So she was in time, very funny. So her name appears in Akkadian, and she's one of the names associated with Ishtar. Ishtar is a goddess that goes way back. She is a star goddess and a war goddess. In Palmyra, she's shown as a seated deity holding a scepter, and so on and so on. Her throne of worship was located close to Yathrib or Medina. She was worshipped, and she was linked with Allat and Al-Uzza. Now, Ugaritic, this is in Syria. This is a very early tribe located in the Syrian region, close to the sea, and Ugaritic evidence has 3 linked female deities as the daughters of Baal. So now you've got Allat, Manat, and Al-Uzza as the daughters of Allah, and of course Baal, and then of course the chief god of the Kaaba was Hubal. Hubal was brought from Syria, as we covered last time. Hubal was brought from Syria, and he has 3 daughters. So Baal, Hubal, Allah are the same god. In fact, multiple times Hubal is called Allah within the Sirah, the biographies of the Prophet. And Muhammad was consecrated to Hubal, who is Baal. So, yeah. So these connections. Now, of course, this is the symbol for al-maqah. This symbol is not always the sun. Sometimes it is Venus, the star, or there are 2 other stars. There are 3 stars technically. Venus being the morning star, the planet Venus, of course. And then, of course, you've got 2 other stars. We will get to that. It's not always the sun. Sometimes it is a star. And, of course, this is the horn symbol here, the crescent moon. Same here. So we've spoken about al-maqah. He is the main god of Yemen and Aksum before Christianity. And his consort was Shams or Shamash, the sun god. And of course, in what is very interesting is that in Arabia, the moon was masculine, male, the sun was female, feminine. And of course, in Babylon, the moon was masculine and the sun was feminine. Everywhere else, the sun was masculine, the moon was feminine, except in Babylon. Isn't it a coincidence, Thaddeus, that Babylon and Arabia both share the same idea of the moon and the sun in gender?
Yeah, it's a very interesting coincidence, almost like it's not a coincidence.
Yes. Now, understand, you got the Mesopotamian moon god Nana, also known as Sin, Nanar, Nana Shwen, and other similar names. There were numerous gods in the pantheon, but many of them are the same god under different names. So have I covered this before? Because then I can skip over this. No, I don't think I have. Have I covered this before, Thaddeus?
I don't think so.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about Nabonidus. He's worth talking about. So Nabonidus controlled this region. He was the last king of Babylon, of Sumeria. This is the region he controlled, and he worshipped Sin, or Nana. So he glorified Sin. His son was Belshazzar, who we know from the book of Daniel with the writing on the wall. So the prophet Daniel, the writing on the wall occurs. So that was his son where that incident occurred. Now, he lived 10 years in a place called Tamar, which is up here in Saudi Arabia, about 300 km north of Medina. Now, Tamar, oddly enough, is also called Yemen.
Interesting.
Very odd. It's called Yemen. Okay, so Tamar, this town in Saudi Arabia, is also called Yemen. It is a large oasis with a long history of settlement, located in Arabia at the point where the trade routes between Medina and Duma begin to cross the desert. It's about 350 km north of Medina, and it was a center of moon worship. Now, there's more to be said about him. We will also find that he not only established centers of moon worship, he also built a temple for sun worship, because the sun was the consort of the moon, and of course also a temple to another god who was the star god, who was the offspring. So in fact, we have the triad. He was a proud sponsor of all of these gods. He was the son-in-law of King Nebuchadnezzar, good Christian, as you know from the Old Testament, good guy. Now, his mother was high priestess of Sin in Haran, in Turkey, and his daughter was the high priestess of Sin at Ur. Now, Abraham's origin in Ur is discussed in Genesis 11, 28, and 31. And Abraham then spends significant amount of his time with his family in Haran. His brother is named Haran after the city, and other members of his family are named after cities that are in the area of Haran in Turkey. Now, the word Yathrib appears in an inscription found in Haran belonging to the Babylonian king Nabonidus. So he speaks of Yathrib, by the way. Now, Nabonidus he reigned from 556 to 539 BC. He was the last king of Babylon, related to Nebuchadnezzar. His childhood was in Sabian, Haran, which is, as we know, a major site of worship for the moon god Sin. He rearranged the Babylonian pantheon of gods. He got rid of Marduk. He's pictured here on this engraving found in Saudi Arabia wearing a wizard's hat with a wizard's staff. And here he's got with the Arabian pantheon of gods, along with the snake. This is apparently the constellation. No, it's the Milky Way. But you've got here the star, the sun, the winged sun, and the moon, the horned god. He lived in Tema, Saudi Arabia, for 10 years. Sin, the father of the gods and the god of wisdom, the Hukmah, was worshipped in Iran until the arrival of Islam. And all of the crescent moon flags in the region are traced to Sin, the moon god. So multiple Islamic countries have stars and crescents on their flags, which are derived from the major pagan god called Sin of Babylon and Canaan and Sumeria. Your comment?
We have John Wick in the comments. He asked if he can challenge something, and he's certainly welcome to do that. But at the moment, we're just telling you about Babylonian beliefs. We haven't even made any claims about Islam yet.
Yeah, well, except I said that the multiple flags, the multiple pagan symbols on the flags of Babylon, on the flags of Muslim countries, are traced to Sin and Babylon, right? Which is pagan, moon worship. Now, there was a trinity of gods, the winged feathered sun disk, and Shamash, the god of justice and morality. Then you've got the 7 or 8 pointed star of Ishtar, the goddess of sex, love, and war. She was a goddess of war. She had numerous names. You have Venus, you have Aphrodite, Ashtoreth, Astar, Attar, and others of a similar and diverse nature. Here he is again. Notice this is the round, this is the full circle. Notice the full circle and then the thickened crescent on the bottom here. It wasn't always a crescent standing alone. You might have the entire moon with the thickened crescent. Now, Anunit, just to give you an example, Anunit was an Assyrian or Chaldean goddess worshipped by the early monarchs. She's supposed to have resembled the Venus of the Greeks. So this is the same as the pagan Venus of the Greeks. Anunit was also a star, which was identified by the Assyrians with the goddess Ishtar, the daughter of the moon god, Sin. So now you've got the same connection to a different culture, the Assyrian culture. And the third is an account given by Nabonidus of his restoration of the temple of the moon god at Haran and the temples of the sun god and of Anunit at Sepharvaim. So he worshipped the full triad and he was supporting the entire triad. And notice the god of Sepharvaim was Adramelech, which also known as Adrammelech, and another god, a partner of his, Anammelech. Notice though we have here Adramelech, so we're back to Malik. The idea of Malik. Now, of course, Malik meaning king. However, when they say Malik, do they mean a human king or do they mean the sky god king?
Good question.
Right. So now, Tema's influence, Sin and Hadramaut. Now, Hadramaut is Yemen, central Yemen. Tema's position may have forced or stimulated the other town states of the oases of Arabia Deserta to partake to some degree in the civilizations of the surrounding countries in the northeast, the northwest, and the south, while trying to preserve or re-establish their independence. Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 1, page 883. So when Nabonidus invaded, he went down as far as Yathrib, as far as Medina. So he conquered Arabia all the way down to Medina. So he controlled that region. But because of his dominant position, the influence of his culture, being the dominant culture of the day, influenced the rest of Arabia. Because there was direct trade. The trade route had to go straight through there. So now different scripts were used and developed. Interestingly, even the clansmen of the nomadic tribes knew how to write. So according to the archaeology, they have found scripts, and we'll cover this as we go through, in numerous languages of the day. So it's very interesting that when Muhammad comes along, suddenly there are no written documents anymore. Everything just disappears. But prior to that, there was a plethora, a wealth of writing in multiple different languages that suddenly just disappears. My thinking on this is that, of course, that they just erased the evidence.
Yeah, it's certainly suspicious. We have plenty of writings from Arabia from, say, the 1st century or BC times, and we have writings starting again in the 8th century, but we don't have anything really from the 6th, 5th, 6th, 7th century. It's almost like that portion of history was erased.
Yes, exactly. So the evidence again says that there was a lot of writing. So we'll continue. So there are also several important archaeological sites on the coast of the Arab-Persian Gulf, right? And as in the north of the Hejaz, a large proportion of the surviving documents are written in Aramaic, or rather varieties of the two, okay? And Aramaic was the mother tongue of part of the population, especially the elites. A large number of Aramaic-speaking churchmen and religious authors in the Nestorian church came from the Gulf, especially in the 7th century. There were texts in Sabian script, which were relatively common before the Christian era. In the Gulf, as in the north of the Hejaz, texts in foreign languages like Akkadian, Imperial Aramaic, Nabatean, Greek, and Latin are common, according to these scholars here. In southern Arabia, there were 5 inscriptions that were found in Ge'ez, which was classical Ethiopian. It must be noted, Ge'ez is the closest language to Arabic, and it is also the oldest surviving language, which has also survived unchanged. There were 2 in Hebrew, 3 Sabaic Nabatean bilinguals, and a Greek Latin one inscription in Greek, 1 in Nabatean, and 1 in Palmyrenian. There was some graffiti in Greek, Nabatean, Palmyrenian, as well as Indian and Ge'ez graffiti. So there was a huge amount of architecture that had all of this on them. There was graffiti, there were inscriptions, there were all sorts of things. And yet, there's only these surviving fragments now, which means there must have been a huge amount of written documentation that is now gone. So just to know, there was a rich use of language in that area. Yeah?
Absolutely. Thunderous points out that this is a proud tradition in Islamic history. Uthman burning the Quran, and today concreting over Mecca instead of doing archaeology in the region that, in theory, could prove the truth of Islam. Instead, they're just putting up giant concrete structures and hiding everything.
Correct.
So we don't have direct evidence of Muslims eliminating the written history from prior to the foundation of Islam, but we do have indirect evidence. 1, it's missing, and 2, there are similar things in Islamic history. There's a story about burning a library because the guy said that if it agrees with the Quran, we don't need it because we already have the Quran, and if it doesn't agree, it deserves to be burned. So we
Right.
have indirect evidence.
We also know that they have, if you go through what ISIS did, what the Taliban do, they erase evidence of the past. They erase anything that's not part of their culture. They've destroyed, they've blown up, they've removed. And in fact, the Saudi government has many times destroyed old relics. There's plenty of evidence of them destroying old relics, old inscriptions that are inconvenient to their story, to their narrative. So this is a common trait within Islamic countries, that they erase old history.
Yeah, the
So
excuse is that they're getting rid of the pagan symbols, but those pagan symbols are evidence of what was going on before Islam came.
correct. So now, in the earlier polytheistic period, the Hadrami pantheon, that's the Hadramut, that's Yemen, shows a close similarity to other South Arabian areas, dominated by the astral triad of the moon, sun, and the Venus star, except that the moon god in Hadramut bore the distinctive name Sin, borrowed from the Babylonian religion. He is commonly referred to as Sin of Ilm, and it has been conjectured that the latter term is the name of the principal shrine of this deity. So now we know that the Yemenis, who worshipped, as we know, al-maqah, worshipped Sin. Al-maqah was the prime deity. Sin was the prime deity. Therefore, al-maqah is Sin. And as we know, al-maqah is El space Makkah. So you have El being the primary god of their pantheon, El, and Makkah. So yeah, so there you go. You guys do the maths on that. Now, let's deviate for a moment to Haran, back to the north, and start tying all of this back to the south. A village called Haran existed in Turkey, standing on top of the ancient one from the Old Testament. Found near Haran are villages that bear the names of Abraham's great-grandfather and grandfather, Serug and Nahor. Haran was the father of Lot, and Abraham's brother Lot was named after the town of Haran. The cities of and Haran both had the moon god as their main deity. Both are called the city of the moon. Both of them are called the city of the moon. And Terah, the father of Abraham, worshipped other gods, according to the Bible, and he moved his family from to Haran. We'll talk more about his father soon. Notice here, it says here, Arabia and all the princes of Qatar, they were the merchants of thy hand, in lambs and rams and goats, and in these they were thy merchants, the traffickers of Sheba, Saba, Yemen, and Rama, they were thy traffickers. They traded for thy wares with chief of all spices and with all the precious stones and gold. Haran and Cana and Eden, and the traffickers of Sheba. Ashur was as thine apprentice in traffic. These locations are all in northern Mesopotamia. I should have made that sentence separate. So now you've got Sheba. So the Bible confirms that there was traffic between that area in Turkey, close to Syrian border, northern Mesopotamia, as well as with the Sabians, the Yemenis, who worshipped, as you know, the moon god al-maqah. So Sin, as we know now, is their god, and al-maqah would then be the same god. Okay, so your thoughts there, Thaddeus?
Yeah, it's interesting that we have all this history to the north of the area of Mecca and Medina, and we have all this history to the south, but that one little area, everything has disappeared. It's very interesting. I don't think it would be reasonable to assume that there was no people traveling through that area in all this time, and we're not leaving anything behind, and yet all the evidence has disappeared.
We've established that they were on the trade route, that these people traded massively. They were massive traders all the way to India, Greece, Rome, everywhere. These guys traded. They were huge traders. Right, let's continue. Now, it seems to be of great importance for the cultural and religious development of the Arabs that Nabonidus of Babylonia conquered Tema in 550 BC and made an expedition as far as Medina. He built a palace and made this place the center of an archaistic religion and cult around the Aramean moon god Sin, perhaps with the sun disk resting in the crescent as the main symbol of this religion. There should be investigations on the close resemblances between this cult and that of South Arabia and Ethiopia. Sin was the state god of Yemen since the earliest inscriptions of this state. So we're talking about archaeological evidence. So this is the Hadramaut here. This is Saba, right? There were various denominations here and so on. Over time, things changed. But understand, so this Sin was the main god. And we know al-maqah originally was the main god. And the inscriptions confirm all of that. But it tells us here that the close resemblances between this cult and that of the South Arabia and Ethiopia. They all worship the same gods, the same pantheon.
So we do have a question here. So in Surah Yasin in Al-Quran, are they referring to the god Sin?
Yes, I'm getting to that. So there are numerous references to Moono deities in the Quran. Several of the Quran's chapters are named after pagan deities. Several chapters are named after pagan deities. We'll talk about that. Yes. So now let's talk about Terah. Now, Elam, the name Elam, is the name given to the moon by the southern Hebrews. Variants of Elam were Era, Etera, al-maqah, that's the god of Yemen, Jera, Shahar, and Terah. Terah is the name of Abraham's father. Just a little aside here. Yam, the Babylonian sea god, killed by Baal with two clubs fashioned by Qatar Wahasis, called Driver and Expeller. With the first, he was struck on the body and driven from his throne. With the second, he was struck on the head and driven from his seat of authority. Now, notice, unfortunately, I saw the reference. I found it in a text, and now I cannot remember where I found it. It was to the god Qatar. The Star and Moon are successive chapters in the... Thank you for that, Armageddon News. Yes, thank you for that. So I saw a reference to the god Qatar with the same name as... It's called Qatara, Kauthar, Kothar, various names. Kothar happens to be supposedly the spring in paradise where the waters flows from. Okay, it's a place in paradise. But there's a pagan god called Qatar, and here you've got Qatar Wahasis. Right? Notice there's a country next to Saudi Arabia called Qatar. Ibn Kathir, Ibn Qatar. This, bless you. So understand, Qatar is another pagan god. You've got a whole country. Now, when you look online and you try to find what does the word Qatar actually mean, what's interesting is you get no one really knows. The scholars can't seem to find out. It's a big secret. No one really, except it's named after a moon deity from pagan times. Rather convenient is my view. Now, I believe, guys, please correct me here, because I've heard discussions when they talk about the Red Sea, they call it Sufyom or Safyom, something of that nature. Well, Yom happens to be the Babylonian sea god. Now, one reference they will make to Qatar, they'll say, well, we think the name means the sea. Okay, you will find that reference. But anyway, so Yom, so Sufyom, well, Yom happens to be a Babylonian god. Just so, by the way, if you do see that. Now, Terra means ibex, which in ancient times was a well-known moon symbol on account of the curved horns. Egerton Sykes wrote that Terra was the theophoric name. It's like a godly name. Terra, ancient Semitic name for the moon, equated with Terah, father of Abraham. The moon was also known as Etera and Jera. Abraham's younger brother was named after the city Haran, the city of the moon. Haran was the city of the moon, so the name Haran seems to have become a theophoric name synonymous with the moon god Sin, or Shin, as he was called. The temple of Bilqis, which is the queen of Sheba in Yemen, was a moon god temple, a temple to al-maqah, which fact misled the Arabs to think that Solomon's god Yahweh must be a moon god.
So we have a couple questions for you from Siraj Haq. So Ibn Kathir and Qatar are related?
The reason I'm saying that is that I found a reference to, and I've lost it, except for this one particular reference, but I found references that showed there was a moon god called Kothar, Qatar, Qatara, something of the nature, Qatar, right? And the same as the name, Kothar, Qatar. So Ibn Kathir seems to be a variant of Qatar. And the country Qatar is named directly after the moon god. Now, for instance, in the Yemeni dialect, the Q becomes a K in the Arabic dialect. So the Qa becomes K. So Qa becomes Ka. So these things interchange. So Makkah becomes Makkah. That's why the city of Makkah, the temple of Makkah, al-maqah, the Yemeni Makkah becomes Makkah in Arabic. So understand, so there seems to be this relationship. The sounds, the names are identical or very, very close.
And then we have a question from Creationist. Muslims like to point to similar things when it comes to Christian doctrines, both Old and New Testament, that they have supposedly evolved from ancient paganism. How would you answer if that is your expertise?
I do cover a little bit of that actually in this discussion. First of all, remember, it is perfectly legal, and not only legal, it is obligatory for Muslims to lie. So in their doctrines of lying, Muslims are required to lie. It is totally obligatory. So they are perfectly allowed to lie, and so they will lie. Now, also context is different. For instance, the god El, you can say El for Yahweh, right? So within El, the context within the Arabian pantheon and within the Sumerian Babylonian pantheon, this was a moon god. This was a pagan god. However, if you read the Bible, it states that Yahweh speaks to the Jews, to the Hebrews, and says, you will destroy these gods because I am El. I am the only one worthy of that name. I am the true God. The context is completely different. He says, I am the one true God. So he is saying, no, these pagans have stolen my title. You will take it back. I will reclaim these names. So the context is very different. Christians clearly do not worship a pagan moon god. Whereas here we've given plenty of evidence, 6 hours worth so far, I think, that we're dealing with Babylonian, Assyrian, Sumerian paganism, Canaanite paganism.
And I would just add, we get this charge not just from Muslims, but from atheists and whatnot. They're like they try to shock us. They're like, "Did you know that in ancient Israel they worship multiple gods?" And I'm like, "Did you know that the Bible tells us the exact same thing?" That
Yes.
if you bother to read it, it was a constant struggle between polytheism, paganism, and the monotheism and devoted to Yahweh. I mean, that's like the whole theme of the Old Testament, is that the people were constantly trying to go back to these other gods. And then we're told that it's supposedly shocking that it wasn't pure monotheism in ancient Israel. And we're like, yeah, that's the whole story of the Old Testament, that the majority of the people were not faithful to God.
Right, and then constantly trying to get them back on track. Juliet says lying is halal. Lying is not only halal, it is wajib. It is obligatory. Okay, so mankind's original religion. Remember, so again, we spoke about Muhammad's companions weren't out looking for the religion of Abraham, the true first religion. So I want to bring across this little bit here. This study treats the religious and intellectual history of the city of Haran from biblical times down to, that's what the book's about, Haran. The author unravels strands of religious tradition in Haran that run from the old Semitic planetary cults through Hellenistic Hermeticism, Gnosticism, and Neo-Pythagoreanism, and Christian cults to esoteric Islamic sects such as the Sufis and the Shiites. Right, so that's what this is about. I'm not going to get into that. That's worthy of an episode all on its own. But I want to read this. The Sabians of Haran and the Classical Tradition by David Pingree. Now he speaks here of, so he wants to justify their practice of astral magic and their interest in the Greek astronomy and astrology that astral magic required, served to maintain the study and to preserve the texts of the sciences during the centuries in which they were ignored in Byzantium. It is further shown that the Greek philosophical and scientific material, this is about the Sabians of Iran, okay? So the Greek philosophical and scientific material available to them was mingled with elements from ancient Mesopotamia, India, Iran, Judaism, and Egypt to form a syncretic, this is a concoction, a soup, system of belief that they could claim to be mankind's original and authentic religion. So you had the Sabians claiming that they'd mixed all of these religions together to form mankind's original and authentic religion. This is in the 2nd, 3rd centuries. So if Muhammad was looking for the original religion of Abraham, mankind's original religion, and Islam conforms to all of this. Greek philosophy, like their little science about conception, the Greeks, right? And all of this Greek science that they stole from the Greeks. And then, of course, they've mixed all of this stuff together.
Absolutely.
Right. So now,
yeah. Real quick, Siraj Haq says, please forgive me, but you guys' research is jaw-dropping. I don't know why he said, please forgive me. Maybe he doesn't understand what that jaw-dropping is normally a compliment. And thanks, I know that he's a Muslim, so I'm actually not sure if he's complimenting us or not, but I agree that this research is jaw-dropping, that this is a shock to, Muslims and Christians alike, that we just do not know all this information.
Right, now let's look at the word El, because this relates to something we were just asked. So El in Hebrew is the ancient Semitic term for deity, so it's a general term. However, it's also a specific term, right? In the Syrian, it was Ilu, and in Ugaritic, it was Il, right? Now, we've said before in the previous show, and you need that for context. This is about 9 hours worth of material in total, I mean, once you look through it, right? We had Karib Ilu, Karibilu, or Karibi Ilu, right? Again, related to the Yemenis, related to the Mukaribs, right? Makaraba. So generic word for God in the Semitic languages, used over 200 times in the Old Testament, often as a modifying term with it, but in Job and Psalms, it occurs alone. El was the chief and somewhat vague, shadowy god of the Canaanite pantheon. See Ras Shamra, and the title is used in the Old Testament to express the exalted transcendence of God. See Elohim. The Hebrews borrowed this word from the Canaanites. The linguistic derivation of the name is uncertain. Suggestions include roots that mean to be strong and to be in front of, as a leader. The Canaanite god El was the father of human beings and of gods, called father of mankind and the father of years. However, he was an immoral and debased character. It is a tribute to the high morality of the Old Testament understanding of God that a title that in Canaanite usage was so defiled, so morally defiled, could be used to express the moral majesty of the God of Israel. So the Hebrews said, no, our God is El. He is the supreme deity, not this filthy demon that you worship. Just as the word God in English can be used of the true God or of false gods, so this word in Hebrew may refer to heathen gods, which usually means idols. So we see here that noun, so Strong's H, Hebrew 410. Il, noun masculine, also proper name, Samaritan, Phoenician, Sabaean, Assyrian, Ilu. So also in Arabic, okay, it's Phoenician, Palmyrene, Nabatean, Sabaean again, Arabic, and Assyrian, Alatu, again, Alat, Assyrian, okay? So the name is well used, the term is well used across numerous of those. In other words, it was intermingled across all of the cultures that existed in that time. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Cherokee Gypsy. So let's continue. Here we have variations of El. This is numerous Hebrew variations on El. Here we've got the in English, Ba'elim, Ba'elim, Be'el, Hal-El. Hallel happens to be, well, Hallel means the crescent moon, right? It's also associated with what we would call Satan within the Old Testament. Hallel also is the name, Hilal is the name of the moon, one of the moon gods, the crescent moon god of Arabia. You have Hal-El, and you also have Ka'el. Okay, and we'll come to Ka'el in just a moment. So now Baal and Athirat in the Bible. So in Israelite religion, Yahweh replaced the great god El as Israel's god. So if they were looking for the religion of Abraham, then they had to go to the one before Judaism. That's the religion of Abraham's father, which would have been moon worship. In Judges, read that during Joshua's time, the Israelites did what was offensive to Yahweh. They ignored Yahweh, their God, and worshipped Baalim, which is the plural of Baal. They worshipped the many versions of Baal. So, in other words, there weren't different Baals, it's just that different groups would emphasize a different aspect of the God, right? I've mentioned before on my channel that, for instance, you walk down the street and you see the Church of the Nazarene. Then you see the Church of the Good Shepherd. You see the Church of the Risen Christ. You see the Church of the Redeemer, the Church of the this, the Church of the that. They're not different religions. They're the same religion. They're just using a different aspect of what they see of the nature and the qualities of God. Would that be correct, Thaddeus?
Yes.
So these are just different. They're just different. They emphasizing something that they find important to them, and of course they also worship Atherat, also known as Asherat, known as Aterat, which is the plural of Asherah. So the prophet Elijah asked King Ahab to summon on Mount Carmel 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. Asherah is again associated with the god Baal. This time the Asherah. Now, of course, Baalah is the wife of Baal. Baalah. Right, so you have Baal and Baalah. Very interesting. Maybe just coincidence. So Baalah even has prophets about as many as Baal. Asherah is associated with Baal during the religious reform of King Josiah. He orders the objects made for Baal and Asherah removed from the temple and burned. So, and the famous site of Ugarit on the Syrian coast yielded a cache of 14th to 13th century BC cuneiform tablets that are a source for understanding pre-Israelite Canaanite religion. They are ritual texts and at least 3 epic myths. Among the goddesses who appear in the Ugaritic text is Aterat, the consort of the great god El. Aterat is Ugaritic equivalent of the Hebrew Asherah, who is the same as Venus that we saw earlier. The same gods, different times, even though these groups no longer exist, that religion, that pagan moon religion, has lived on. Now notice this map here. It actually should extend a lot further than this, right? But this was the best one that I found online. So these guys here from Yemen invaded Arabia, and they controlled all of this region, all the way up to Mecca, Medina, all the way up here. So Yemenis invaded and controlled all of Arabia.
That's right, a pretty important area there we have on that map for Islam.
Yeah, and this is their capital right here. This is their capital right here. So it's called Qaryat Kal. Remember when you said Ka'el earlier as one of the names for God? Ka'el, Kal, that's what they used to call him. Oh man, I've been studying this for weeks, months. I don't know. It's just been, I've been working on it for a long time, since last year sometime. And it just takes a long time to edit and put it into some sort of sense. So,
yeah, just so everyone's aware, Lloyd puts in, I don't know, what do you think, like 40 hours making this 2-hour presentation? And he's doing this every 2 weeks. I mean, everyone here should be supporting Lloyd. I mean, he's putting in immense effort to this. A couple, the Muslims were disputing a minor point, the derivation of the word Qatar. And that's like one tiny trivial point. Come on, guys, pay attention to everything he's saying here. We're not saying that every single point is certain, but the overwhelming combination of the evidence, even if certain points are not correct, the overwhelming evidence points to Islam having pagan roots. And you don't even have to say that it makes Islam false. You just have to acknowledge the truth of the matter, that Islam was heavily influenced by the people the beliefs of the people of the region where it arose. That's hardly a controversial statement, or at
Yeah.
least it shouldn't be.
Yeah, you've got the entire region all the way from here right through Persia, all the way up through Mesopotamia, all the way into Turkey, Syria, all of it. It's the same gods, the same gods, the same religion. So let's continue here. Now, Muslim sources. So this is called pagan, Kinda pagan, Yemeni pagans. So Muslim sources agree that Hadramaut was the original homeland of the tribe of Kinda, a nomadic offshoot of which founded the central Arabian kingdom of Kinda, the Kindat al-Mulk, okay, al-Malik, Kindat al-Malik. Let's go back here. This is Kinda here. This is the Hadramauts. This is all. So these guys invaded from this area, went north, and took over Arabia. Now, it is not easy to trace the precise limit of the territories controlled by Himyar. There is no doubt, however, that it was almost the totality of Inner Arabia, up to the vicinity of Lower Iraq and perhaps even Palestine. That's a lot of territory. So they went from coast to coast, all the way into Iraq, into Babylon, right? Thank you very much. Thank you. He never returns as a horse. Yes, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. For the support. Thank you for the kind words, Thaddeus. And yeah, so the capital city still stands today, southeast of Makkah. The gods they worshipped include Kaal. You saw Kaal earlier, Kaal, right? And they also worshipped Athar, who happens to be the sun goddess we just mentioned. Athar al-Sharik, we'll get to that word al-Sharik later, and a god called La. We will get back to La as well. So the question is Allah a contraction of Illah, right? Or is it an expansion of La? That's a question that hasn't quite been satisfactorily resolved. Generally, people more popularly prefer al-Illah is contracted to form the word Allah, but they worship La and they worship Kal, okay, El. Now, this al-Sharik, rising from the east or the sunrise, right? Sharik means rising from the east, an indirect reference to the sun. It is a Muslim name also mentioned in the Quran, which means companion or partner, but it also means the rising sun. The sun rising, yes? So, South Arabian inscriptions from the 4th to 5th century AD refer to a god now called Rahman, the merciful one, who had a monotheistic cult, and he was referred to as the Lord of heaven and earth. So, oddly, in the midst of all of this, there was a monotheistic god. 200 years, 300 years prior to Muhammad, we had a monotheistic god called Rahman, the merciful, the Lord of heaven and earth. And he was worshipped by a monotheistic cult out of the blue. And Aaron Hughes states that scholars are unsure whether he developed from an earlier polytheistic systems or he developed due to the increasing significance of the Christian and Jewish communities, because the Christian and Jewish communities in that region of Arabia called the one God, Yahweh, Ar-Rahman. So this God happens to have the same name as the God of the Christians and the Jews, just by sheer coincidence. And so I'll pause there for a moment. Your thoughts, Thaddeus, on the potential implications of that.
Yeah, you know, this monotheistic cult arising shortly before Islam is highly suspicious, almost like this is proto-Islam here. The Muslims will say this is much too early, but that's because they believe in the standard Islamic narrative, not because of any factual based things. And I think that, you know, this definitely needs to be explored. I'm not saying 100% definitely this is the start of Islam or the start of what would become Islam more accurately, but it's something that needs to be taken into account. Meanwhile, John Wick is in the chat here going on and on about how sin is not the same as the Yemenite god Sayan, which isn't even something that we've mentioned. So apparently he's not paying attention
Like
and just trying to guess what we're saying.
Yeah, well, we shall continue with that. I mean, look, the guy's a joke, so let's ignore him for now. We'll get to all of those, okay? So now let's look at La. La happens to be a moon god, just sheer coincidence. Sheer coincidence. La happens to be a moon god. Here's his symbol, the crescent moon. In its earliest attestations, the name La refers to the moon as a satellite of the earth. La then becomes conceptualized as a lunar deity, iconographically anthropomorphic, but whose manifestations from the hieroglyphic evidence can include the crescent of the new moon, the ibis or the ibex, and the falcon, comparable to the other moon deities, Thoth and Khonsu. That's from the Routledge Dictionary of Egyptian Gods and Goddesses. Very, very interesting. A lot of this, when you start digging, a lot of this goes back to Egypt. I haven't even gotten as far as Egypt yet, but there are hints all the way through from Ethiopia all the way through. There are always hints towards Egypt. Always hints towards Egypt. That's something else that's, if someone wants to, feel free to uncover that. I think we're going to find a lot of fun things there. Okay, so now we earlier spoke of Malik. So let's look at Molek, Muluk, Malik. So Malik, Abdul Malik. Abdul Malik is not a name, it is a title. It comes from a previous word, the Mukarrib, right? From Yemen, the Mukarribs, right? And we discussed it at length in the last show. So you have Abdul Malik, who was a title. If you had the Abd, the servant or the slave of the Malik, the slave of the king, the slave of the king. The king was not always a human king. It was the slave of the god, right? The slave of the god. So you have the slave. Baal was the Malik, okay? Molech was the Malik. In fact, Molech is derived from the same root, M-L-K. So it's derived from the follower of Baal, the servant of Baal, the slave of Baal, the possession of Baal. And Karabal, Mukarab al. We discussed that at length in the last show. Mukarab Baal, the one who serves, the one who obeys, the one who follows, the one who carries out the will of Baal. Malik, Moloch. And yes, they come from the same root. The name derives from combining the consonants of the Hebrew melech, king, with the vowels of boshet, shame. He has a bull head, the root Malik. He has a bull head. Now it's interesting that John Wick is trying to spread his misinformation in the chat because he's utilizing scholars who are applying Greek concepts to the Arabian pantheon, and we know that the Arabian pantheon is the inverse and utterly different to the Greek pantheon. For instance, the moon is male because they derive from the Babylonians. And of course, the bullhead in this case is the symbol of Malik, who is the symbol of al-maqah, who is a moon god. Now, certainly he's speaking of Dionysian traits. Now, ask him to quote you the exact quote from that scholar. He won't do it, but ask him to quote you the precise quote. Okay, it doesn't say is, it says maybe, or maybe something else. Maybe this, or maybe that. Okay, he misses that point. He's gonna miss that point. And of course, other scholars have ridiculed that and stated, I'm sorry, but you cannot apply this culture's definitions to these guys because they've got a completely different set of definitions for how they viewed it. So now you've got the symbol of al-maqah is the bull's head, or one of his symbols. Right? So, and the root is Malik, also known as Malek, also the same root as Adramelech, the Akkadian god. So some modern scholars have proposed that Moloch may be the same god as Milcom, Adad Milki, or a name for Baal. Molech is Baal, is al-Maqah, is Sin, or Shin. Of Allah's 99 names, one of them happens to be Molech, MLK, the same root as, now, is he the king? Or is he Molech? Because it also means king of the kingdom, but it could also mean Molech. And don't forget, Allah does not have 99 names. Allah has approximately 500 names because these lists of names are entirely at the will of the person compiling them. Right? So if you look through any list of Allah's 99 names, you're going to find a completely different list from person A, person B, person C. So Allah has at least 250, if not double that, in terms of names, because these names lists are entirely at the will of the person compiling those lists. So do not believe the fact that Allah has 99 names. He has hundreds of names. You know what is John Wick just stated? So look, I'm going to put John Wick in timeout if you don't mind, because this is rather annoying. Because he says that it's La, small l, and not La. It's the capital you took as an L. You can't read. What is interesting is that I did not type it myself. I did not write this myself. I am copying from a very old document, and I copied and pasted that section directly out of the book. So you need to speak to the publishers about that, not me. And we know what they mean. Okay, so call up the publishers, complain to them. I took that directly. I did not edit that. I just took it exactly as I saw it. So, I mean, that's desperation. That is entirely just desperate, trying to nitpick on stupid things. Okay, now moving on to the next thing. Any comments, Thaddeus, before I continue?
Yeah, I would just say that the God law is well known. I don't know why he's trying to claim that the slide said IAH instead of LAH. It's not like this is the only source of the name law. So the fact that this publisher used an ambiguous font from 100 years ago when they published it, I mean, who cares? It's so silly.
Yeah, it's completely irrelevant. So yeah, but Malik, so Molech, right? You guys do know who Molech is. Like, Molech is mentioned in the Bible. He is the god that had babies sacrificed to him. Okay, so you'll know him. We will come to him, but babies were sacrificed to him. He was an abomination to God. Right. This is Molech. So you'll be familiar with Molech. Okay, so moving on from that. Now, Sabians al-Muna. So this goes back a long way in history. We mentioned earlier that Lot, his family were persecuted by the Sabians, who served Satan. Satan wanted people to kill Lot's family, to hurt him, so that he would then turn against God. And God allowed Satan, and Satan used the Sabians to attack Lot. Don't forget, Lot is the son of Haran, the brother of Abraham. Right now, if you look at Judges 8:21, Gideon arose and killed Zaban Zalmunna, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Right, these people were enemies of the Jews, the enemies of Yahweh, enemies of Israel back then already. Besides the crescent ornaments and the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, Midian is in northwestern Saudi Arabia, and besides the collars that were on the necks of their camels. So these people of the camel were enemies of Israel and enemies of Yahweh back then. Now, here's a question. It's an interesting historical question that has come up by scholars. Is Midian a land, or is it a tribal league? Some scholars have suggested that the name Midian does not refer to geographic places or to a specific tribe, but to a confederation or league of tribes brought together as a collective for worship. Paul Haupt first made this suggestion in 1909, describing Midian as a cultic collective, German Kultgenossenschaft, or an Amphictyony, meaning an association, or German Bund, of different tribes in the vicinity of a sanctuary. So Eilat, on the northern tip of the Gulf of Aqaba, was suggested as the location of the first shrine, with the second sanctuary located at Kadesh. Now, what is interesting, they're speaking of a Bund, they're speaking of a confederation, a league. Remember I said in Yemen, you had the Muqarribs. The Muqarribs had confederations of tribes that worshipped at a particular temple. Do you recall that, Thaddeus?
Yes,
so that very same
Yeah.
Yemeni concept of the Muqarrib was also present in the north of Arabia. Now, they are thought to have worshipped a multitude, including Baal Peor. And guess who Baal Peor is? You will know him as, well, we just had him up on the screen. I'll bring him up again. Baal Peor happened to be Molech. So they were thought to have worshipped Baal Peor and the queen of heaven, Ashtaroth. We've come across her as Attar, again, the consort of, well, we've discussed her at length. Now, the enemies of Yahweh then and now. In Psalms 83:4, they have said, "Come and let us wipe them out as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more." This was their mission then. This is their mission now. The people of the crescent and the camel have been wanting to wipe out Israel and Yahweh. Make their nobles like Oreb and Zeb, and all their princes like Zaban and Zalmunna, who said, "Let us possess for ourselves the pastures of God." Do you think this is something prophetic, or has a parallel with what is happening in the world today?
Definitely. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a prophecy, but the second one being a parallel, definitely.
Right. So just so you know, this is typically where Midian is said to have been, and Edom and Moab up here. Okay, so Moab is around where we'd say Jerusalem is, just on the eastern side, on Jordan. Right, then you've got Edom and Midian on the northwest corner of modern Saudi Arabia. Okay, and down here you've got Hala al-Badr. So Hala al-Badr. Badr is one of the names of the moon, one of the names of the moon gods. So I'll borrow the name of Yahweh. So let's look at this book, Arabian Ethiopia by C.J. Robin, Oxford Handbook of Late Antiquity. A second question concerns the nature of Allah. Was he the god of the supporters of monotheism or a god of pagan origin? In the oldest revelations of the Quran, the name of Allah does not appear. Allah does not appear in the Quran until the 49th chapter. So Allah is missing in action in the Quran until chapter 49. When Muhammad refers to God or Allah, he says the Lord. Or if he wants to give Allah a proper name, he calls him Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman is the name of the one God of the Jews and the Christians of Arabia, and also of the followers of another fake prophet of Arabia called Musaylima or Musaylama. So now suddenly you've got a competitor to Muhammad, a fake prophet competitor of Muhammad, utilizing this fake monotheistic cult of Ar-Rahman. You've got the Jews and Christians preaching monotheism, also worshipping Ar-Rahman, and suddenly Ar-Rahman finds his way into Muhammad's revelations and becomes the Allah of the Bible. Don't you think that's a convenient little change? Well, that is?
Yeah, just a little change there.
Yep, so rather convenient that suddenly, late in the Quran, halfway through the Quran, in fact, suddenly Ar-Rahman pops up and Allah pops up, because they called him Ar-Rahman, and then halfway through Allah, because he needed to differentiate himself from the gods of the Jews and Christians and Musaylima. He had to go, well, okay, looks like I've got exactly the same God. I've got a worse message, right? I've got a much less popular message. I need to find something different, something that is similar to the pagan gods of my people, but also kind of similar to the God of these monotheists, the Christians and the Jews. Now, Allah is a God originating in polytheism. Inscriptions confirm it at Qaryat al-Fal. This is exactly when I mentioned Qaryat al-Fal. This is the same as what I mentioned earlier, where the Yemenis invaded Ethiopia, where the Yemenis invaded Arabia, and they settled in their city southeast of Mecca. The city is also known as Qaryat al-Fal. For example, a certain eagle entrusts the tomb he has built to Kal Allah. So Ka'el, right, the Hebrew Ka'el, who became their god Kal, is also known as Allah, and his consort Athtar. So now you've got Allah, right, Ka'el, the moon god Kal, who is known as Allah, along with his consort, the sun goddess. And the text is dated by the writing style to the beginning of the Christian era. So that's very interesting. So now you've got this happening in that part of the world. Okay, so Allah has his consort, just as the moon god has his consort, and Kal is the moon god Allah. So numerous tribes called their god Allah.
Before you move on,
Sure.
if you could go back to that slide real quick, I just wanted to remind people that we earlier showed that the cult of Al-Rahman had arisen in the 4th and 5th centuries. And here the Quran is taking that name and applying it to its own deity, which is very suggestive of it being a development of that belief system rather than being something completely new, completely revealed by a divine being. And I'll remind them that this is actually a monotheistic cult. So they can't even use the excuse that, well, it can't be the same thing because that's pagan and Islam isn't, or that's polytheistic and Islam isn't. No, because this is a monotheistic cult, and then they take this name of this monotheistic God and they apply it to their beliefs. It's very suspicious. Let's just put it that way.
Right, fair enough. Right, so moving on here. So now let's look at some pre-Islamic Arabian deities. You've got Hilal. Hilal is a god of the new moon, right? The crescent moon. Is the moon god of Qataban from Yemen. He has the goddess Atirat as his consort. We've come across Atirat under numerous different names everywhere across Arabia, everywhere across Sumeria, Assyria, you name it. We found her everywhere. Deuteroscopy 12 has Yahweh commanding the destruction of her shrines so as to maintain the purity of his worship. Aterat equals Asherah equals Ashtaroth equals Astarte. The prophets of Israel strongly warned God's people not to worship these false gods in numerous of these biblical passages here. And Kal, also known as Hal, and Ka'el, we've seen that before, is the moon god of the Hadramaut, Yemen, and the Kinda. So Hilal, now these are different phases of the moon. We will cover that. Sin or Shin was the chief god of the Hadramites, connected to the Semitic god Sin. Talab is a moon god worshipped by the Sumay, a Sabian tribal confederation. And then we have these two very odd standouts. And these are linked to the Kaaba as well. Yatha is associated with salvation. His name means savior. It's an archaic equivalent to Yasha or Yasha, a masculine noun meaning salvation that appears in Strong's Hebrew 3468 and 3467. It's taken from the root word Yasha, Yeshua, Yasha. So suddenly you have this god that was associated with this region and he brought salvation. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
I don't really have a lot to add at this exact moment, but it is a very interesting connection there. And then, we see this word for or this God associated with salvation being adopted.
Yeah, very late in the game as well. And so don't forget, Muhammad states that there's a couple of hadith we'll come to where Muhammad will only touch the Yemeni corner of the Kaaba because touching this corner brings salvation. Right, which is very interesting. So yeah, but we'll get to all of that. And Dul Khalasa is a god worshipped by the Bajila and the blah blah, and was reportedly worshipped as a god of redemption. His temple became known as the Kaaba of Yemen. So now we have historical references to the Kaaba of Yemen, and in fact, there's a Kaaba to the north as well in northern Mesopotamia. There's other Kaabas, right? And of course, the Yemeni corner hadith tells us that Muhammad will only touch that corner of the Kaaba because touching that corner brings salvation, brings redemption, removal of sins. Okay, and of course, al-maqah. We know al-maqah, known as Sin. He's the prime god of that pantheon. Okay, now I want to mention this is more, okay, of the things I'm saying, this one is probably the most speculative, okay? But I'm just going to put this out here. Someone can have a look into this if they like. But you're looking at the triliteral roots, like MLK for Malik, Molech, right? The pagan gods and so on. Al-Maq, creature, possession of Yahweh. Okay, Al-Maqah may mean someone, the creature or the possession of Yahweh, the slave of Yahweh. There's a early 7th century BC seal, a Hebrew seal, that has LMQ. Okay, Al-Maqah, right? Al-Maqan Yahweh. So the name may be taken to mean the creature of Yahweh or the property of Yahweh, the possession of Yahweh, the slave of Yahweh. Al-MQ, Al-Maq, right? So the 7th or 8th century, so it goes back 700 or 800 years before the birth of Jesus. And so there was an active cult of Yahweh where the term Al-Maq was very popular. So this is the most speculative of things I'm saying, but I just want to mention this triliteral root already comes up. So it's possible that these gods, these deities, were not only in competition, but they were a corruption of the concept of Yahweh.
Definitely, definitely speculative, like you said, but very interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, I just want to mention that because LMQ, that's al-Maqah, right? Al-Muq. Al-Muq is one of the names of al-Maqah. Il-Muq. MQ, that's one of the ways you describe him. So speculative, but now let's go forth and sin no more. Table of ancient planetary deities found in the Middle East. So let's have a look. The sun, Roman, Sol, Greek, Helios, Arabian, Alat, Shams. Oh my gosh, 2 pagan gods in one name. Alat, Shams, meaning the goddess of the sun. Right? Then you have Shemesh, Shapash, Shamash. Shamash, Shams. They still call Syria Shams, I believe. And the name is still used in the Quran as well. The moon, called Allah Ta'ala, Shin, meaning the Most High God Sin. They still call Allah Ta'ala today. This is still used with Allah. Allah Ta'ala is still used today, the Most High God. So the term Allah Ta'ala Sin was used in Arabia prior to Islam. So they've just stuck a line there. Babylonian, he was Sin, and Shwen in Sumeria. And then, of course, you've got all of these, and you've got Uzza as well for Venus. Oh, Uzza, Venus. So now you've got these. So these names go way back. They're the same pantheon. Notice it's identical pantheons. Roman, Greek, Arabian, Hebrew, Canaanite, Babylonian, Sumerian, same gods, different names. Right? So nothing changes. Now, Arabian, the moon gods are gods of war. So you have Allah, okay, also known as also known as Ilumku, which is al-Maqah, another name for al-Maqah. And then Mahram as well, Ethiopian, and Osiris, and Sin, and Wad, and Yera. The moon gods are all gods of war, right? We've come across some of these names before. Now, the moon worship centers were Aksum, Haran, Hurayda, Yemen, Marib, Yemen, Jericho, Makkah, supposedly, Shabwa, Yemen, the Sinai Desert, Tema, this is where King Nabonidus set up his throne for 10 years, Ur and the Desert of Sin, okay? The vicious god in the Quran is consistent, though, not with the god of the Bible, but with the South Arabian war and moon god. So you've still got the consistency with Allah today. And Hans Kraus wrote the main god, the national god. Now, again, to get back to some of the things John Wick is saying, for instance, he's trying to claim that al-maqah is a Dionysian god. He's trying to use the Greek template in this case, where this is a Dionysian god of farming and agriculture or whatever the heck it is. Unfortunately, the national gods, the moon gods of the Yemeni region, were all moon gods, first of all, and those gods are all gods of war. They're not gods of wine, good times, and agriculture, right? They may have some aspect of them related to agriculture, but the national god of war in all South Arabian, in nearly all Semitic monuments, is a sure identifying mark of the moon god. So the national god of war is a moon god, and the moon god is a god of war. So al-Maqah, Shin, is a god of war. And reading about the Sabian moon and war god, al-Maqah's temple, okay? And now, of course, you've got al-Maqah's successor, Allah, right? Notice here, a 250 AD inscription reads, "As for the servant of Kaukab, he has thanked the power and the glory of al-Maqah Thahwan, the bull." Oh, that's interesting. "Because he has granted him to remain safe and unscathed in all those campaigns and battles. He has granted him to return with honor, with spoils of 32 slaughtered enemies, and with booty, which has delighted his heart." So slaughtered enemies and booty is a tribute of Allah. This is exactly what Allah does. Let's look at the first century before Christ. It says, Rabbi Yazam of the tribe Akraf of Hiran has dedicated this inscription to al-Maqah of Hiran. Oh my gosh, al-Maqah was in Haran as well, the Babylonian city, the Hiran in Turkey. Oh my gosh, al-Maqah was up there as well. Same god as in Yemen. That's unusual. Al-Maqah of Iran, because al-Maqah has granted him trophies, spoils, and captives. I wonder, there was a certain prophet who also got trophies, spoils, and captives. Can't think of his name right now, but if you guys can remember, drop it in the chat. I'd love to see it. And he saved his servant in the battle in which he faced the Arabs. Well, so they beat the Arabs. Maybe the Arabs decided, this is a very good god for us to have on our side. He's tough, And then, of course, you've got this 8th century inscription on a massive stone in al-Maqah's temple at Sirah, and they talk of winning control of the incense root and crushing the kingdoms of Alsan and Nashan. Al-Maqah was a war god. He wasn't a god of whatever John Week and Jason Boring. So whatever John Week or Jason Boring is saying, unfortunately, he's got his gods mixed up. These are war gods.
So we did have a question here from Ivan. I think it was probably related to the previous slide. Could those be I believe that's supposed to say stars they worshipped in the desert?
We will get to the stars. Yeah, this is that we will get to the stars. We will definitely get to that.
I just wanted to comment on that last slide. Up until this point, we've kind of just been going through the beliefs of various pagan systems. We haven't been directly tying them to Islam. The point being that, it's a continual thing. These pagan belief systems are continual. They develop over time. They transform slightly from nation to nation, but they're basically all the same basic idea. But then we come to al-Maqah here, and we can see how the stories about this god were a direct inspiration for the stories about Muhammad.
Correct. And we're going to start tying. I wanted to show that this moon god worship was prevalent across all of Arabia. It was all the same god. Think about it. You had the Yemenis invading Arabia and controlling it from the south, and you had the Babylonians invading from the north and controlling it from the north. And then not only that, the Yemenis happened to have exactly the same gods as the Babylonians. So there was the soup of paganism, the soup of Mesopotamian moon god worship everywhere. I mean, now you've got al-Maqah not only in Yemen, but al-Maqah in Turkey. That means al-Maqah got around,
Yeah, right? And if he's in, those two regions, you have to think that there's got to be people who believe in this god in between as well.
Yep, exactly. He didn't just get there. I mean, unless he got in Burak and he... But okay, so now, guys, I want to mention now the influence of the Arabs. So now let's start not wrapping up, but Hatra, a small Arab kingdom in Mesopotamia. So here we have Iraq. This is northern Mesopotamia. This is Haran up here. This is Syria here. So you've got Turkey and Göbekli Tepe and Haran up here. And right up here in the north of Iran, was an Arab kingdom. The Arabs went up there and established a little kingdom. In fact, they had several of them. right? So Hatra was an ancient city in Upper Mesopotamia located in present-day Nineveh in northern Iraq. Okay, Nineveh, great. It was a caravan city for the traders, so the traders would make stops here. It flourished in the 2nd century, was destroyed and deserted in the 3rd, and only discovered in the 19th century. Now, it was called Al-Hadr in Arabic. It's recorded as Hatr in Aramaic inscriptions. The city was famed for its fusion of Greek, Mesopotamian, Canaanite, Aramean, and Arabian pantheons. So it was multicultural. It had temples to all of the gods. So these Arabs were trading all the way from Yemen, all the way up into Syria, all the way up into northern Mesopotamia, and presumably up into Turkey as well with their trade routes, and all the way down into Canaan, into what's known as Israel today. And they had their own cities, their own garrison cities, officially called the House of God, Beit Illah, just like the Kaaba. It's called Beit Allah, right? Beit Illah. Illah, of course, very close to Allah. In Aramaic inscriptions and recorded as the enclosure of Shamash on a coin. Shamash, again, being the sun god or the moon god, the star god. I can never remember. I can't keep it straight. But Shamash. Now we're back to Shamash, god of the sun, I think it was. So now you've got the House of Illah. Okay. Now, this is the capital of possibly the first Arab kingdom in the chain of Arab cities running from Hatra in the northeast via Palmyra, Baalbek, and Petra. So the Arabs were not only in Arabia, they happened to be in the heart of Babylon, Sumeria, and Canaan, putting up temples to every single one of these cultures' gods. The city had temples to Nergal, the Assyrian, Babylonian, and Akkadian god, Hermes, Greek, Athragatis, Syrio-Aramaean, Alat, Shamia, Arabian gods, and Shamash, the Mesopotamian sun god, as well as god of Arabia. Other deities mentioned were the Aramaean Baal Shaman, the female deity known as Ashur-Bel, Baal Shaman, Nabatea. So your thoughts on this, Thaddeus?
Yeah, we keep building this picture here, and that we keep bringing in all these different gods, and kind of tying it all together, showing how all these people in all these different regions kind of had the same belief systems. And then, are we really to believe that the early Muslims didn't come from the same background? I mean, I think that would be a rather silly thing to suggest.
Yeah, exactly. These guys were in the thick of it. They were banking on it, in fact. So they were in this milieu. They were in this soup of paganism. So they were not separate from it. They were not isolated from it. They were in the thick of it, right? They had their own city-states in the heart of it, right? Earlier rulers were titled Maria, or Lord, and later ones were called Malik Darb, King of the Arabs, the Malka, the kings. So yeah, so they were the Maliks of that region. Now let's look at some Quran surahs named after pagan deities. So Quran 36, Yasin, the heart of the unholy Quran. Sorry, the heart of the whole. I'm sure it wasn't. I must have changed that from the original. But so this verse, this chapter, Quran 36, is called, when you Google it and you read about it, Muslims everywhere in their websites are calling this chapter the heart of the Quran, the heart of the Quran, the heart of the Quran. The most important, it is the most representative. It shows the divine origin of the Quran. Right. So the meaning of Yasin, according to them, and this is my summary of the whole thing. The meaning of Yasin is unknown. Unknown. It is debated amongst Muslim scholars. One interpretation is, oh, human being. Somehow they are unable to decipher what sin could mean. Thaddeus?
Yeah, it's almost like they destroyed their history and then they forgot it or something. I mean, we seem to have a pretty good explanation of where it came from, and if this is the heart of the Quran, that's kind of exactly what we're saying, right? That the origins of Islam are through moon worship.
Yeah, well, through the worship of the Babylonian moon god, Baal, Molech, Sin. So yes, this is the heart of the Quran, the heart chapter. do they all of a sudden drop their gods? And no, I actually do address that as well. I do address that in some later slides. Yeah, I do discuss that as well. But yes, so understand the heart of the Quran is quite the coincidence, right? Is this. So now let's continue. So I think this is I think this is very funny that these guys, we need to help these scholars along, okay? Because they can't seem to figure out who sin is, okay? They think it means, oh, human being. Right. Then you've got Quran 54, al-Qamar, another pagan moon god of Islam called the moon. Al-Qamar is the moon, one of the phases of the moon. Ar-Rahman, God of the Jews and the Christians, incorporated in the Quran very late, halfway through the Quran. Al-Buruj, referring to the stars. Okay, again, pagan associations. Al-Malak, the king, Moloch, also known as the Akkadian god, Moloch. So now you've got, it could be the king, it could be Moloch. Understand? And sometimes when they refer to the king, are they referring to a human king, or are they referring to the king who is king of the heavens, king of the gods? This question is not entirely resolved. So now imagine the Bible had multiple chapters named after pagan deities from Babylon, that is. Don't you think they'd be having a field day with us?
Oh yeah, definitely. If we didn't have the book of Psalms and we instead had the book of Yasin, they would be like, see, here's the proof. You took that pagan deity and
Yep. Then you've got Al-Tariq, the morning star. The morning star could be Venus, Sirius, as well as Canopus. You have the planet Venus and Sirius and Canopus. We'll get to Canopus because the Kaaba happens to be oriented directly on the star Canopus, the second brightest star in the sky. We have Ashams, the sun, consort of Baal, consort of al-maqah, consort of sin, one of the pagan gods of Arabia, Ashams. And of course, in Quran chapter 34, interestingly, Sheba is mentioned, and they discuss the dam break at Marib. Okay, so it's interesting. So they're very well aware of what happened because they discussed the temple being destroyed by the dam wall breaking and flooding the area, and thus forcing the area to be abandoned. So they're well aware of that area of Yemen. It actually does come up. So there's an Islamic tradition where Allah's lower garment is pulled at by a talking womb. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's really crazy. I know. Right. Yeah. So now I want to mention Yerah, son of Joktan. Okay. No district of Jerah has been discovered. However, Uruk in Yemen. Oh, now we have Jeddah appearing in Yemen, and Yarach in the Hejaz. Oh, that's in Arabia. Are places named by Arabic geographers, taking the Jewish name Jerah. The fact that the word in Hebrew means moon, it's probably just a coincidence, has led to the following suggestions that the Banu Hilal, the sons of the new moon, in the north of Yemen, Gob al-Qamar, the Bay of the Moon, and Jebel al-Qamar, the Mountains of the Moon, in eastern Hadramaut in Yemen. But in southern Arabia, worship of the moon caused the word to bulk largely in place names. So I didn't want to go into like depth here, but moon names, moon god names, appears in Arabian geography.
Yeah, I think that, when we look at the evidence, it's pretty clear that the moon god was the chief god of the pantheon, at least in this region.
Yeah, correct. Well, in the entire region, it seems. So let's look at Moloch, known as Baal, and Ashtoreth. Moloch, Canaanite deity associated in biblical sources with child sacrifice. The name derives from combining the consonants of Hebrew melech with shem, right? The latter often being used in the Old Testament as a variant name for the popular god Baal. So Moloch and Baal seem to have a relationship. There's plenty here, but monoliths in North Africa bear the engraving Malik, often written Malik Mr and Malik Dim, which may mean sacrifice of lamb and sacrifice of man, because people were known to sacrifice babies and children to him. In North Africa, Moloch was renamed Kronos. Kronos migrated to Carthage in Greece, and in mythology became a titan and the father of Zeus. Moloch is affiliated and sometimes equated to Baal, although the word Baal was also used to designate any god or ruler. And of course, Kronos becomes Saturn in Rome, becomes the god Saturn. So now you've got, what are your thoughts there, Thaddeus?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out the importance of that first bullet point there, that the fact that it's taking the word king and putting in the vowels of shame probably means that this isn't what the god was actually known as. Rather, the actual vowels were probably different. So then when you go to the other regions and you see different vowels in the God's name, and you say, oh, they're completely different. They don't sound alike. Yeah, you're kind of missing what the Hebrew authors did to the Bible. They took the consonants of the God's name and then superimposed shame over the top of it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because obviously, yeah, it's shameful, sinful. He was morally depraved, right? You know, in Arabic, for instance, things don't always translate well in different languages. Like when I lived in the Middle East, obviously I had to have driver's license, ID, and other documents, right? And I had to get documents made for me for various access passes for my work and so on. And they don't have Lloyd doesn't translate well into Arabic, so they would have lo and yed, lo. So my name would be Loyed. So I would always become Loyed, Loyed, Loyed. They couldn't say Lloyd because, I mean, when they read it, it said Loyed. So, just the way it was. So yeah, things don't translate. Now let's look at the word Malik. It has Semitic roots. Examples of the word with the root Malik, MLK, are Mamaluk, Melchizedek, Malkite, and Moloch. Well, that name keeps popping up. It is West Semitic. It means to rule, to dominate, to possess. The same as Baal, oddly enough, means exactly the same as Baal, right? To own. Common Semitic noun, Malk, ruler, Moloch, king. Malkite, from Aramaic, Malkai, plural of Malkai, royal, royalist, from Malka, king. Excellent. Melchizedek, Hebrew, Melchizedek, my king is righteousness, from Malk, prefixal form of blah, blah. Moloch, from Hebrew, Molech, from Canaanite, Mulk, perhaps a variant of Canaanite, Malk, milk, king. So it could be the god is king. Molech, the king of the gods. And then Mamaluk, from Arabic, Mamluk, owned, slave. Mamaluk, passive participle of malaka, to own, to possess. So just thought I'd throw that in there for reference. And of course, Silam. Now let's have a look at Silam. We're always told that Silam means, Islam means peace. Salam, peace. And Islam is the root of Islam. But Islam, the root of Islam, means graven idol. So if you go to Strong's Dictionary, H423, Allah means curse. I've covered this before. Do remember this. Allah means curse. We're told in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. We are often told that the Arabic SLM, the triliteral root, means salam or Islam. It's a common Semitic word. In Strong's H67, 54, and 55, it means image, heathen gods, as referenced in 2 Kings 11:18, Amos 5:26, and Daniel 2:31, image and heathen gods. The SLM root, the earliest known form, is in the name Shalem, the ancient god of dusk of Ugarit, Canaan, Syria, known as Venus, the evening star, which is the offspring of El with Atarat. So the root that forms the word Islam was first used in the form of the god, the star god, who is the child of the moon god and the sun god. I think that's fascinating. I think Indeed. That is really, really interesting, So Canaanite, again, we're talking pagan as it can be. And then in Akkadian, the same root is Salmu, which means an inscribed image or a statue. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. And Salim means graven idol or graven image. In Aramaic and Syriac, it means image or idol. It is in Nabatean, it's in Palmyrean, and in Hatra in northern Mesopotamia. We just spoke about Hatra. Salam, which is in Arab play. I mean, Salam, Islam, and then Hatra, which is an Arab city, mentions it as a graven idol. And in pre-Islamic Arabia, Salam is often an object dedicated to a deity, right? And it has a feminine version because Salamat in Yemen, it is singular, it is dual, and it is plural. Your thoughts, Thaddeus?
Yeah, if Muslims are going to tell us that Islam doesn't mean submission because the root word is SLM, well, they just create a bigger problem for themselves, didn't they?
It means graven idol. Yeah, it actually does. It's a graven image. It's one of the sins, one of the major sins. So I'll continue. Here we go. SLM, used of anything vain. A shadow. It is a shadow, something dark of something vain. An image, a likeness, okay? An image, an idol in 2 Kings. If you read 2 Kings, it says, thou shalt, it's very negative. Amos 5:26 are extremely negative, right? It's Syrian and Chaldean as well. Now we're talking about pagans, Ur of the Chaldees, the Syrians, the Assyrians, pagans, pagans, pagans. And it's also in Arabic, an image. So this is why you shall not make images of Muhammad. Possibly. I mean, one has to think about it. But look, guys, there's room for you guys to look into this. The black stone originally had human workings on it. Read John of Damascus. Interesting. I need to finish my stuff on John of Damascus. I need to finish my slides on him at some point. But guys, understand, Islam, they will tell you Islam means peace. Yes, they also forget to tell you very conveniently, Islam also means a graven idol. Right, now the Hilal.
Before you go on here, John raised this point, which is correct, that the root is the word image in Genesis 1:26. Let us make mankind in our image. We're not to make any image of God because we are his image. And so an idol is a representative of a God. So we are God's representatives on earth. That means that, we stand in his place, which, has an implication about how we're supposed to live our lives. And we often miss that because, it's translated image there and it's translated idol elsewhere. Or sometimes, it is translated image, like don't make engraven images. But we miss that the two are using the same word. And he's right. That's what the theology of the Bible is that we don't need images of God because we are his image.
Right, we're made in the image of God, correct? Yeah, I actually had that reference. I had it in there, the original Hebrew root and all that, but I took it out because I just thought it was getting too long. So I just took it out. I had to strip this down. So let's go back to this, the Hilal, the crescent, okay, the crescent moon, Islam's symbol. Notice how many of these things, these crescent moons are everywhere. Stars, crescent, stars, crescent. There's a huge number of these crescent, stars, and moon symbols on flags of Arabic countries, right? Flags of Muslim countries. And in fact, look at this Morocco. This is a pentagram. They've got an honest to goodness pentagram on the flag. This is crazy, but look at this. All of these pagan symbols. This is pagan. This is nothing other than paganism on these flags, right? And they're everywhere. So let's think about that for a minute. So Hilal and Qamar, the moon gods. So the classical Arabic name of God in his form of the full moon is al-Qamar. Arabian names for the moon god include An-Nayir, the luminous one, and Sayin, who is a cognate of the Babylonian Sin. Now, I know that John Week or Jason Boring earlier was saying that Sayin has no reference and no connection to Sin. No. The scholars happen to say differently, right? And Sayin, cognate of the Babylonian Sin to the ancient Hadramites of Yemen, and Qal to the tribe of the Kinda. There you go again, Ka'el. Wad, platonic love to the Manaeans, and Warak, and Waraka ibn Nawfal, wanderer to the Himyarites and the Sabians. Now, a common act of moon worship amongst the Semites was to kiss the hand upon seeing the moon. Right? Notice the crescent from the Encyclopedia of Islam. Crescent, Hilal. Moon, Hilal, al-Qamar. Planet, al-Qamar. In astronomy, the sighting of the lunar crescent, which is important for fixing the beginning and the end of Ramadan and the festivals in Islam. The Ruyat al-Hilal. Okay, fine. The crescent moon is very important to them. Now let's have a look in Job 31.
A quick comment. Sure. This is the first time you've mentioned Sayin in this presentation, and it was just a very minor point. Yet, John Wick earlier was spamming over and over again how you were an idiot for saying that sin and Sayin was the same thing. In other words, he wasn't paying any attention to what was actually being said and just had some talking points in advance, which wasn't even any of your presentation here.
Yeah, so, I know. This is from Arthur Jeffrey. So, he's going to have to take it up with that scholar. Arthur Jeffrey's a major scholar. So, of course, now let's look at Job 31, 26, 27. If I have regarded the sun in its radiance, or the moon moving in splendor, so that my heart was secretly enticed, and my hand offered them a kiss of homage, that too would have been in iniquity, calling for judgment, for I would have denied God above. Within the Bible, kissing the hand, that is a sin. So these guys are specifically in violation of the laws of God, laws of Yahweh. Okay, so look, this I'm not going to go into, but Isaiah 14:12 speaks of Hillel ben Shahar. Both of these, Hilal is the crescent moon, and Shahar happens to be another god the star god of Islam. We've spoken about the star god, fallen angel, Satan's symbol, and the symbol of the religion of peace. Hilal ben Shahar means crescent moon and morning star. Shahar is the god of dawn in the pantheon of Ugarit. We just spoke of Ugarit and the star pantheon, the star god, and the connection to Baal and the connection to Islam and all that. And Shahar is described as a child of El along with the twin Shalim, the god of dusk. We've just spoke of Shalim, the first reference to Es-Salem, to Islam, which is a god of the stars. So there you go. Now you've got a connection from Shalim, who is the brother of Shahar, who happens to be Satan. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And of course, right, and Yeshua heals a boy possessed by the moon. The word lunatic comes up in Matthew 17:15. Right, lunatic is used, and I'm not going to go into that. It's just outside the scope of what I'm doing here. But there's a reference to a boy possessed by the moon in Matthew 7. There's two references to this, and the term lunatic comes up. I'll leave you guys now. I want briefly on this one. Waraka ibn Nawfal and Abdul Uzza. Okay, Abdul Uzza, the servant, the slave of Al Uzza. Waraka ibn Nawfal, early Arabic monotheist and contemporary of the Prophet. Biographical details of him are few in number and legendary in character. He is the son of Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza, right? And he's the cousin of the Prophet's first wife, Khadija. Now, on this, I want to mention this Nawfal happens to have pagan connotations. Okay, the name actually has pagan connotations, and his name Waraka, it also has pagan connotations. Warak is one of the phases of the moon. It's a moon god. If I recall, I just mentioned it earlier, Warak, right? Also shortened, I believe, to Wak, but we have Warak as a moon god. And then Nawfal also has specific Yemeni pagan connotations. His name and surname, and his father is Abdul Uzza, the slave of Al Uzza. So his father's family, his whole family is pagan. His names are both pagan, and the guy's supposed to be an ex-Jew come Christian. I just find that rather convenient. I'll put it that way. This is the pagan that identifies Muhammad as a true prophet. The Christian. Why would I call him a pagan? I have no idea why. This is the Christian that identifies Muhammad as a true prophet. So
yeah, very suspicious there.
Yeah. So yeah. And then, of course, I want to mention Attar. Let's have a look at Attar in Islam. Okay. Attar, again, Attar, the star, the star god. It denotes also a relic of the Prophet, like his hair, his teeth, his autograph, or many of his thousands of footprints. Okay, I might be exaggerating there, but Muhammad apparently left footprints everywhere. Sorry, man. I just gotta. Oh, sometimes it's such comedy. So Muhammad has footprints everywhere. So it's a relic of the Prophet. Attar. Okay, Attar is also the name of the moon god. Okay, that's the name of the moon god. No, the star god. Sorry, the star god. In the science of the tradition, it usually refers to tradition from companions or successors. But in astrology, Attar is also used as a technical term in the theory of causality, with reference to the influence of the stars. This is from the Encyclopedia of Islam. Okay, so the stars are said to have an influence on human behavior and on human fate. The stars influence our lives here on Earth, and in Islam, the stars are considered higher beings possessing a soul. This is legit. Islam believes that the stars are higher beings that possess a soul. Well, why is that? Because the moon god and the sun god have children that happen to be the stars. The stars are the children of the sun god and the moon god. Does that make sense to you, Thaddeus? I mean, because this is bizarre that they consider that the stars have souls.
It depends on what you mean by makes sense. Does it make sense with what we are told about Islam? No. Does it make sense with what we've been looking at today? Yes, it does.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, look, I want to skip forward. I'm going to stop here quickly, and I'm going to skip forward for a minute. Okay. I'm going to show you why this is relevant. I'm going to skip ahead quite a bit here to that section. I'm going to show you why this is actually relevant. I'm going to show you this. Actually, stars have souls. So forgive me for my okay, so guys, this is the Kaaba. This is known as the Hatim. Okay, this is the crescent moon. This is from above. These little things here are lights. These are stars, right? These lanterns on the crescent moon. So now you've got the people who circle counterclockwise. They circle counterclockwise around the Kaaba. right? Now, notice in the very first episode, in slide 28, I discussed that Abraham worshipped pillars, and I showed you the pillars all over Axum, the pillars all over Yemen, the pillars in Saudi Arabia, these pillars, and God tells Abraham these pillars are an abomination. Right, these pillars are an abomination. You will not worship pillars, because Abraham worshipped pillars and trees. And God said, you will not do this. You will abandon this worship because this is paganism. Notice these pillars inside the Kaaba. Okay, this is what God warned Abraham about, and that he was told to destroy the pillars. Now you've got this Hatim. This Hatim is the crescent moon, right? This here, now notice, now in Islam, the stars are relevant as well. As you would notice, the moon and the stars and the sun are all relevant, okay? But what you've got is, you have the Kaaba represents Polaris, the pole star. Now the Kaaba is oriented on the second brightest star in the sky, called Canopus. So the Kaaba is oriented on Canopus, but it's also oriented on the four winds, right? We'll get into that. But now you've got the crescent moon. There is also the sun disk. We'll get to that. And you've got the center of the universe. All the stars in the universe move counterclockwise around Polaris. Now, what happens is, when you move around the Kaaba, as you go counterclockwise around the Kaaba, what happens is, when you're at the back of the Kaaba, you can't see the crescent moon. But as you come around the corner, you start to glimpse the crescent moon. It's symbolic of you seeing the crescent moon. You do it 7 times and you earn a reward in heaven for seeing the crescent moon as you come around the Kaaba, because this happens to be like the Milky Way, and this is the night sky. Symbolic of the night sky, this is the Milky Way. The door of the Kaaba happens to have the sun and the moon, or the sun and the star, inscribed on it. The symbolism is on it. Okay, now I want to show you this. So bear with me here. This is people going counterclockwise around the Kaaba. And this, you see, are the stars going counterclockwise around Polaris. Okay, and the Kaaba is oriented directly on Canopus, the second brightest star in the sky. And the Muslims freak out. There's a massive newspaper headline every time the moon rises above the Kaaba.
It's was set up for that purpose, and then they think it's a miracle that it aligns. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So we used to worship stones. Skull Supra. Please drop that in the comments later so I don't forget that. Sahih Bukhari 64401. I need to make a note. Okay, hold on. Sahih, please give me a second so that I do know. 64401, right? That is very interesting. Thaddeus, if you could find that, and then we can just drop it on the screen in a bit. But that is very, very interesting. So let me find you again before I get too lost here. Okay, so guys, understand, this is something that I wanted to bring up. I'm going to go back to where I was, but so let us continue. Where the heck was I? Okay, so Waraka ibn Nawfal. So guys, anyway, we'll get into that. Now let's go back to Kalpa. Okay, so this is, remember, so they are the stars. So understand, so those people are the stars with souls, the offspring of God. They are the offspring of God moving around the Kaaba, because that's what the offspring of God do. They circle. So yeah, you work it out. You work out the symbolism. Tell me if my maths is correct. Do you think my maths adds up, Thaddeus? Or am I just clutching at straws there?
I think you're good.
Okay, right. So Quran 53:1. Allah says, by oath of the beloved shining star Muhammad. No, he doesn't actually. That's just the scholars making it up as they go along. Allah says, by the star when it sets. Now, why would Allah swear by the stars? I thought Allah would swear by Allah. I thought Allah would say by Allah or by me. But Allah swears by the stars. Now, why would Allah make an oath? Tafsir Ibn Abbas. Allah set on him a lion near Haran. Odd. Haran? So someone didn't believe Muhammad. Think about this. Someone disbelieves Muhammad. So they pray that this guy gets killed. So Allah, near Haran, has this guy killed by a lion. What's Muhammad doing in Haran? In Turkey, right? So that snatched him from among his friends and took him to a place nearby, tore him apart, but did not eat him because of his impurity, just as the Prophet had prayed against him. I thought Muhammad was in Mecca. Isn't that odd? It is also said here, Allah swore by the stars when they set. Isn't that a little odd, Thaddeus?
Yeah. Very odd. It's almost like the stars are other deities that he's swearing by.
Yeah, and what's Muhammad doing well north of Mecca in Haran in Turkey? I just find that a little weird. So Tafsir Ibn Kathir. So I swear by the setting of the stars, and verily that is indeed a great oath. So Allah says that to swear by the stars, for him to swear by the stars, is a great oath. I thought Allah would swear by Allah, but okay, whatever. Allah apparently swears by the stars. So yeah, maybe the stars are more important than Allah. That, who knows? Okay, so now another point, very interesting point I want to make as we sort of slowly wind down. We've got so Qamar, Kumar, the moon. The Islamic alphabet, the Arabic alphabet, has 28 letters. Okay, and these 28 letters are divided into 14 solar letters and 14 lunar letters, 14 sun letters, 14 moon letters. And they're also divided into 7 groups of 4: earth, wind, fire, and water letters. Earth, wind, fire, and water. The letters of the Quran also happen to have numerical values because they are utilized in gematria for magical spells, right? So I've covered this in the past. I'm going to skip that right now, unless you guys want me to. That is, unless you want me to, I can go to that reference and show you directly. But the letters of the Quran, the letters of the Arabic alphabet, all of them have a value, a numerical value used for gematria, their version of gematria. Okay, called, it's onomatomancy is the technical name. It's onomatomancy, and they've got their own Arabic name for that. So it is used for magical practice. Earth, wind, fire, and air letters, or earth, wind, fire, and water letters, and lunar and solar, moon and sun letters. So notice the alphabet contains 14 Shamsi, back to Sham, the moon god, sun god, sorry, solar or sun letters, and 14 remaining Qamari or moon letters. Sun letters are those that blend. For example, as in spoken Arabic, Al-Rasul, the prophet, is pronounced as Ar-Rasul because Ra, heard of that guy in Egypt? Heard of Ra from Egypt? Thaddeus? God of the sun? Is a blending sun letter. Sorry? No.
I just said I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry, no. So Ra or Re is one of the gods of Egypt.
Oh, I guess I didn't get where you were going.
Oh, sorry. Ra here is one of the gods of Egypt. Okay. Tafsir Ibn Abbas, right? 53:1. So now you've got Al-Razul, the prophet, is pronounced Ar-Razul because Ra is a blending sun letter. Right. So now this is, so why are they telling us about that we've got sun letters and moon letters? Do we have that in English? Sun letters and moon letters, earth letters, fire letters?
No.
Do we have like, do we have gematria baked into the English alphabet? No. But we do. We have magical practice literally baked into the Arabic alphabet. And okay, I'm going to skip all this nonsense because, okay, so they speak of the Qamaria, the moon letters. Now, what is important here for us, okay? The Arabic term for the moon, Qamar, appears 27 times, usually paired with the sun. Okay, the Surah 54 is entitled the moon. So there's plenty of these solar references, these lunar references, these astrological references. The new or crescent moon Hilal appears once in its plural form, and blah, blah, blah. So there's plenty of astrological references in the Quran. But what's important to us is the following. When the Quran talks about, when Islamic literature talks about the light of Allah or the light of Muhammad, the Nuri Muhammadi, it refers to it as Nur, which is moonlight. Allah is referred to as moonlight. Muhammad is referred to as moonlight. Now that is a very odd reference. Don't you think that is?
Yeah, definitely. You'd think that the sunlight being much brighter would be the chosen light, but in fact, it's the moon.
Yeah, because Allah is associated with the moon. Allah's moonlight be upon you. Muhammad's moonlight be upon you. Why would Muhammad be associated with moonlight unless he worshipped the moon deity? Unless he was spreading the light of the moon deity, So, and Allah is the moon deity because Allah's nur is moonlight. It is not sunlight, it is moonlight. Bear that in mind. So the pagan moon religion. So in other cultures, the moon was female, the sun was male. The genders are reversed in Arabia. The sun is masculine. Now notice there's only one other culture where that also happened. It's called Babylon. In Babylon, the moon was masculine. The star is the sun, or the offspring of the sun and the moon. Now, Muslims fast from crescent moon to crescent moon, from Hilal to Hilal, the crescent moon to the crescent moon. Islam has a lunar calendar. That's kind of weird, a lunar calendar, all this lunar nonsense. And then, of course, Islam's mosques all have pagan crescent moons on top of them. The bull's horns. This one's clearly the bull's horns. Here's an old pagan sun and moon together. That's pagan. These guys love. You're going to find no shortage of photos and discussions of, oh my golly, the moon is rising above the Kaaba today. I don't know why it's important. Crescent moon above a mosque, crescent moon and star, pagan crescent moon and star above a mosque. Man praying inside a pagan crescent moon and star. And this is on top of the clock tower. I think it's the, I can't remember the name of the Talna suddenly. This is the huge crescent moon, the huge hilal, the bull's horns above the Kaaba. So yeah, and also, of course, they love photos like this. This is the hilal. You can see here's the whole moon, and here's the thickened portion of the crescent. And here, you've got this mosque. I think this is Pakistan. So there is no shortage. Why are pagan crescent symbols? Why are pagan symbols on top of Islam's mosques if they're not moon worshippers? Your thoughts, Thaddeus, before I go
on. Villainous pointed out that, that sunlight is too fierce. The moonlight is more comforting. That's why it's associated in the desert, which also explains why the moon god was the chief god of the
correct. That's exactly the answer. Yeah, because the moonlight brought dew, it brought growth, right? Whereas the sun destroyed things. The sun was harsh and destroyed. The moon brought comfort, and the moon brought dew, which allowed flowers and things to grow. Yeah, exactly. So the moon aligns directly above the Kaaba in Mecca's Grand Mosque. Now you've got these pillars, again, loads of these pillars everywhere, and you've got constant. There's no shortage of these news articles that celebrate the moon above the Kaaba. Now, this is the Kaaba doors, the sun symbol right here. This is the sun symbol, and of course, this is either the moon or the star symbol. I guess it's the moon symbol. Right above is the sun symbol on the Kaaba doors. Why do we have the sun symbol and the moon symbol on the Kaaba doors? This is weird. If they're not astrological deities, if they don't worship astrological deities. Understand? It's just more fuel to the fire. And here's the older doors, the previous doors of the Kaaba, also happen to have a very prominent sun symbol on it. Apparently, these are the 6th doors of this Kaaba. Apparently, they've had 6 different doors now. So let's look at Yahweh. In pre-Islamic era, Arab Christians used the name Abdallah, servant of Allah, as a baptismal name. And Abdallah was also Muhammad's father's name, but the contexts are very different. Allah is the standard word for God, and is used by Arab Christians as well as by Muslims. The Arab Christians spoke the Arabic language, and they used the appellation Allah, meaning the God. They were Trinitarian. The Quran states that Christians and Druze refer to Yahweh by the title Allah, the God, in a generic fashion, and Christians called Jesus Allah's son, again in contradiction to the Arab Muslims. Arab Christians also used the name Abdallah, servant of Allah, as a baptismal name. When Christians used the title Allah, they had the God of the Bible in mind, but Abdallah was the name of Muhammad's pagan father. So he was named after Allah, the Makkan moon god, just as Makkans with the name Hilal and Qamar were named in honor of the Makkan moon god, because these were legitimate names of the Makkan moon gods. So the pre-Islamic Arab Christians called Yahweh by the title of Allah, the God, as a generic name, and the Arabs called their moon god Allah, does not show commonality between Christianity and Islam or the deities of each. The contexts were very, very different. In fact, Allah is not a name, it's a title. Why does Allah, the God of Islam, not have a name? He does not have a name. So that's a really odd, different doors. The stone was whole once rather than 7. So, yeah, well, okay. So I'm going to move on from here. So the grammatical gender of the moon shows that Allah was a moon god. So the word for sun in Semitic languages is feminine. Okay? The Encyclopedia Britannica says that the word sun is feminine in Arabic. And Yusuf Ali, we all love Yusuf Ali for his translation of the Quran, states, the moon was a male divinity in ancient India. Oh, that's fascinating. It was also a male divinity in ancient Semitic religion, specifically in Babylon. And the Arabic word for the moon, Qamar, is of the masculine gender. And on the other hand, the Arabic word for the sun, Shams, is of the feminine gender. The pagan Arabs looked upon the sun as a goddess and the moon as a god. The Quran translations do not follow the Arabic conventions concerning the gender of the sun and the moon. Scholars follow the ancient mythology of where they live. So therefore, they've been mistranslating this idea, because scholars are saying, well, I live in Britain. We think of it like this in Britain, so they use it that way, not looking at the context. So unfortunately, they just say they get it wrong. Now let's have a look at coins, and we'll probably start winding down slowly. Coins with crescent and star. This is Hadrian. Okay, this is Nabonidus. You've got the symbol. These were pagans. They had this symbol, pagan symbol, more stars, and the crescent, pagan symbol. This is a Templar seal from the 13th century, by the way. The Templars went way off base. One day I'm going to do a talk about the Templars, and you're not going to like what you're going to hear, because man, the Templars went south. Believe me, they went off base big time. Here you've got the Turk Shahi in the first quarter of the 8th century. We're always told that in the 1800s, the middle of the 1800s, the Turks, the Ottomans, adopted the crescent and star. This is not true. We can go back to much earlier before this, in fact. And in fact, you can go back to the 1st century, and you'll find that the Turks have this symbol. Okay, so here you've got a dual crescent crown. You've got the bull, you've got the dual crescent crown, and you've got here the crescent and the star. Now you've got a Persian, Sasanian Empire. Here you've got the crescent and the star, right? Or the crescent. Here you've got, again, Parthian. This is, again, Iran, northern Parthia. And here you've got, and this is where, oddly enough, the Al-Chasai came from, right? And this, again, you've got the same symbol, the same Islamic symbol. And this is a coin from Haran, the very same symbol. This symbolism is pagan. It goes way back to numerous places. You can see in ancient Egypt, you've got the same symbol. You've got this, the disc and the crescent. You've got Anatolian murals from Karm, again, the same symbolism, star, crescent, going way back before the 1800s. And now, Yemen. Let's go here. And so let's look at these coins. You've got here crescent, and the dot doesn't necessarily mean the sun. It can mean Venus or a star as well. You got the same here, the same here. You got the same here, crescent and star, and these weird symbols. So let's have a look here. This is the Venus-Moon couplet. Venus, the morning star. This is the symbol to al-maqah, the moon god. And this is known as the Bakka symbol. And it means glory be to Allah. Okay. It is also glory be to al-maqah, because al-maqah happened to be Allah. So your thoughts, Thaddeus?
When does this coin date from? Do you know?
This was BC.
Interesting.
Yeah, this goes way back. So Bakka. Now, I know there's the concept of Bakka. They speak of, I've been to the Bekaa Valley a few times, okay? The Bekaa Valley. I don't know, because when they say Bakka in the Quran, they're often translated as Mecca. But I know people say Bakka and they think it's the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. I've been there a few times. But what if Bakka meant Bakka, the Bakka symbol, Bakka? What if it meant Yemen? Because you have glory be to Allah. Allah being al-Makkah in this case. Allah being Makkah, glory be to, and Bakka, Allah, Makkah. So al-Makkah was known as Allah in pre-Islamic times. So the Bak symbol meant glory be to Allah. So these guys, originally they based their coins, the Sabians based their coins on Athenian, which is Greek coinage. They were obviously in Greece, right? And they had an intense interest in the Mediterranean world, and eventually they wanted to become independent. They were even in India, and eventually they established their own coinage. So, yeah, so prayers encouraged emphatically in the nighttime at Taraweeh, not so much in the daytime. That's very interesting. Prayers encouraged at night. That is very interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. That's an interesting point. And here we go. This is, again, from Yemen, another coin, and it has the name Sin on it. S-I-N, right there. This is from Yemen. This is a coin. Al-Makkah was the main god, and he was also called Sin. Right there. Bless you, Thaddeus. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this Sin god here is obviously pretty important if he's making it onto these coins. And that earlier coin was super interesting, that it has the Islamic symbols on it, and it's from before 700
Islam.
years before Islam.
And this is al-Makkah, the moon god, and here is the bull's head. And notice these little lines here, these pillars, these tri-pillars. Didn't we see a little cube-shaped building with 3 pillars inside it earlier? I think it was black. Can't you remember? It had 3 pillars inside it.
I seem to have seen that image too. That's
yeah,
weird.
3 pillars, 1, 2, 3, and the bull's head and the moon. It's just a coincidence, I'm sure. Just a sheer coincidence.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
almost
sir.
like this structure has pagan origins or something. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, yeah, we got to think about this. I mean, no, it's just so weird. Okay, so uh, you know what? I'm going to skip over this very briefly, but this spear and the symbol here, this is an old, this is a much older version of this, but also you can see it's a moon god. You've got a spear here, got a pillar that's a spear, and notice here, this Turkish guy happens to have here this moon symbol in his hand, okay, and he's stepping on the cross. I mean, this idea goes way back to some of these. Does the pillar refer to the three daughters of Allah? That is a very good question. I don't know, but that's a really good. That makes sense. That seems very plausible. Yeah, makes sense, right? Thaddeus?
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely worth
it could
further
be.
exploration.
Yeah, no. So I mean, so this goes way back, right? He's stepping on the cross, and you've got Mother Mary stepping on the crescent moon. What's that? So this little battle goes way back. I just wanted to throw that in there. So so Allah's association with the moon is plain to see in the Quran. Okay, and on top of every mosque, yet Muslims tell us, don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe your lying eyes. This pagan symbol on top of our mosques is not a pagan symbol. Okay, just believe that Allah is the God of the Bible and not a pagan moon god. So in the Quran, Dul Qarnayn, there's loads of these. I just decided to do one of these. Okay, Dul Qarnayn is considered a good Muslim. So Dul Qarnayn is a Muslim. It means the two-horned one, the one with the two horns, the crescent moon of odd things, which refers to the crescent atop the royal crown he wore. The crescent crown indicates allegiance to the moon god. That crown, together with the fact that Dul Qarnayn watched the sun set in a mud puddle, shows that Dul Qarnayn in the Quran has a pro-lunar and anti-solar message. The sun sets. So this moon god watches the sun go down. And of course, they were very upset with the Queen of Sheba because I found her and her people prostrating to the sun instead of Allah. They were very unhappy with them because they were worshipping the sun instead of, well, the moon, I guess. But we know for a fact that they did not worship the sun. The people of the Queen of Sheba did not worship, they worshipped the moon. So the Quran gets this wrong. Egerton Sykes wrote that Allah seems to have been preceded by al-maqah, the Sabian moon god, who was modeled on the Mesopotamian moon god Shin. The Quran's Queen of Sheba account shows that the Quran is pro-lunar and anti-solar scripture. Right. And yeah, so yeah, are we okay to go on? Because it's been 2 hours. Should I stop? Because
It's up to you.
I
I'm
mean, maybe I
fine
can
with
just
that.
finish it. I don't think I have that many. So let me see. Oopsie. How many slides do I have? Oh, yeah, there's a handful. So maybe we should call it tonight for now,
Yeah,
because
yeah. If you do all those, we might be going another hour and a half or or something. But
I'm here now, and I'm at 104, and this continues to 135. So maybe we should just call it a night at this point. Oopsie.
sounds
So
good.
guys, yeah. So let me finish the slide, and I guess we can call it. Let me just see what's in here. Okay, I can finish these two slides and then call it a night. What do you think, Thaddeus?
Sounds good.
Okay, guys. So soweit ist alles gut. Nur lässt mich meine Krankheit, der Pri, nicht immer das tun, was ich möchten oder müsste. Okay. So okay, you guys are chatting. Sorry about that. Okay. So yeah. So guys, okay, let's finish this. The Yemen Hadith. So another place. Now this is from the website ghaib.com. Ghaib is to do with magic, to do with esoteric magic. Okay, within Islam, but that's a story for another day. And they say on the website, another place we're advised to seek knowledge from was Yemen. The Prophet said, the people of Yemen have come to you, most sensitive in their souls, the softest of hearts. Belief, iman, akida, or theology is from Yemen. Wisdom is from Yemen. Pride and arrogance are found among the camel owners. Tranquility and dignity among the sheep owners. That's Bukhari and Muslim. The Prophet taught that we should seek out iman, faith, and akida, theology, from the people of Yemen and the Asharis specifically. Now you're talking about the Ashari creed here. Of course, Ashara. Let me see. Was that Ashara? Was that the star goddess? Oh my God. Okay, well, fine. That's just a coincidence. Narrated Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah said, the people of Yemen have come to you. They are weaker in heart and softer in understanding. The faith is Yemeni and wisdom is Yemeni. That's Tirmidhi. Of course, in Sahih Muslim, the belief is that of the Yemenites. The knowledge, the wisdom is that of the Yemenites. Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, and this now is Bukhari, the capacity for understanding religion is Yemenite and the wisdom is Yemenite. It's narrated on the authority of Abu Huraira that the Messenger of Allah observed, The belief is that of the Yemenites. The understanding of the faith is that of the Yemenites, and the knowledge is that of the Yemenites. They're trying to tell us something here. The moon gods of the South Arabian kingdoms were, according to the traditional view, Sin of the Hadramaut, Wad of Ma'in, and Am of the Kataban, and al-maqah of Saba and Himyar, all the same God. As we know, we've discovered they're all exactly the same God. Belief is Yemenite and wisdom is Yemenite. Bukhari, Volume 5, Book 59, Hadith 671. We asked Anas bin Malik, which garment did Allah's messenger, may police be upon him, love or like to wear? He said, the mantle of Yemen. Sahih Muslim, Book 24, Hadith 5179. I have not seen the Prophet touching except the two Yemenite corners, the ones facing Yemen. Bukhari. It was narrated from blah, 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 that a man said, oh, Abdurrahman, why do I only see you touching these corners? And he said, I heard the messenger of Allah saying, touching them erases sins. So this Yemeni corner has some very strong associations with Muhammad. He wore this mantle of Yemen, the shawl of Yemen. He only touched the Yemen corners. They gave erased sin. They gave the erasure of sins. And we've got this God that he worshipped that apparently, remember we had this God that sounded like Yeshua, right, that erased sins, and he was talking about the Yemen corner, this God. And oddly enough, I wonder, where did that belief come? Oh, it was Yemen. Oh my golly, that belief in Ar-Rahman originated in Yemen, of all places. Isn't that just a sheer coincidence, Thaddeus?
Yeah, today we didn't talk too much about specific geography, but if the audience will recall the first two episodes, we spent a lot of time developing evidence that Yemen was the primary, or a major, I don't want to say primary, but a major influence on Islam. And then here we have it from the supposed words of Muhammad himself that the faith comes from Yemen. I guess it's just all a coincidence, though, and we have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, because I mean we're wrong. We're reading it wrong. When he says that faith comes from Yemen, he means it. You have to read it in Arabic because it means something completely different. It's like, guys, when they tell you that Saint Paul was wrong, just say, look, I'm sorry, that particular book of the Bible is da'if. Why are you reading it? And besides, Paul was a sectarian. No one believes him anyway. So just why even talk about it? He was a sectarian, and that verse is da'if. So no, why are you bringing that up? That's what we should do. It sounds ridiculous when you say it like that, but hey, or fake, yeah. That's da'if, exactly. It's Maudu. Never mind that. So you can't even read Greek. Right. So yeah, we just need to tell them that. But so guys, that's my story. Thaddeus, your summary and your thoughts on this. But
yeah,
I think
I do have that hadith that you asked me to bring up earlier, so we can go ahead and take a quick look at that.
Please do.
Let me. So I'll just go ahead and read it here. We used to worship stones, and when we found a better stone than the first one, we would throw the first one and take the latter. But if we could not get a stone, then we would collect some earth, i.e. soil, and then bring a sheep and milk that sheep over it and perform the tawaf around it. When the month of Rajab came, we used, and then the translator puts in to stop the military actions, i.e. that's not actually in the text. It just says we used to do something. Calling this month the iron remover, for we used to remove and throw away the iron parts of every spear and arrow in the month of Rajab. And then someone added, when the prophet sent with the message, I was a boy working as a shepherd in the family of camels, which is irrelevant. Obviously,
iron. You know what? This smells off, because to throw away iron that was incredibly hard to get in that culture and society, that would be expensive and hard to find. You would not throw that away.
Yeah, I mean, this is Sahih here, but I don't think that this has any historical basis to it, other than the worshipping stones part, which is kind of just a given.
Yeah. So yeah, guys. So that's my story for tonight. We can complete this next week. Right. The last few slides. This thing has grown beyond my what I expected it to be. But yeah. But as I said, the idea of moving around the Kaaba counterclockwise, exactly like the stars move counterclockwise around Polaris. Oh my God. No, thank you, Thunderous. Thank you. Those are brain stabbing images I'll never get out of my head.
But on a more serious note, just think about this. The Hadith says that, you know, we used to pick up stones and we'd worship them, and then we'd find a better looking stone and we'd throw that stone away and pick up a different one. This is sheer insanity any way you look
Well,
at
I
it.
mean, remember, like when they said like Allahu Akbar, it doesn't mean you see if you want to say Allah is greater, you'd say Allah Kabir. But when you say Akbar, it means bigger. It means my rock is bigger, not greater, bigger. I have a bigger rock.
That's true. That's true. It really does mean bigger, not greater. We just interpret it as greater, uh, which is bizarre if you're just thinking about it being, you know, a spiritual being. My God is larger than your God. What does that mean? But if you're thinking in terms of an idol, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
the big idol
exactly.
that destroys all the little idols.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where I am with this guy. So hopefully it makes sense. Hopefully this is rational, logical, and coherent. And I think I've demonstrated the connection with Yemen to Arabia, from with Mesopotamia, Babylon to Arabia, and with Ethiopia. I'm still getting to that, but Ethiopia to Arabia, and the fact that the pantheons are identical. It's the same gods, the same moon god Sin, worshipped literally from Turkey all the way down to Yemen, all the way into Africa. And it's exactly the same pantheon. And these are all part and parcel of things that are very much present in Islam today.
We'll close out with the wonderful logic here of John Wick, who has returned
John
right at
Week.
the end.
John Week.
Sorry, John Week. Sorry about the mispronunciation there. There's no such thing as anti-Trinitarian. There's only anti-Unitarianism, which is funny because if one side can be anti the other, then the other can be anti that side. Some amazing logic here that you know
Yeah.
Unitarians can't be anti-Trinitarian. Only Trinitarians can be in a Unitarian. I don't know. This is what passes for logic in Islam, I
Maybe
guess.
he can tell us why they have a pagan symbol on top of every mosque. It'll be interesting to know what that pagan symbol's doing on top of every single mosque.
Yeah,
So,
it's funny that he hasn't said anything in the last 20 or 30 minutes when he was got out of timeout. He posted one irrelevant comment a while ago, so I know he's been here. And then the
yep.
second someone says something about Trinitarian in the chat as an aside, suddenly he wakes up and is ready to
And
start
attacks
spamming.
Christianity.
Yep,
And also, Allah is solid. So are rocks.
that's true. You know, Allah has two left hands and a shin and a foot, and we don't know what else he
Two
has.
right. No, no, he has two right hands because he can't
Sorry,
have a
yes.
left side. Left side. He's got two right sides. He's got two right sides.
Correct. I misspoke there. And he has you know, eyes and a mouth and a couple other things, but he doesn't have, for example, a leg apparently. Um, and I was told that it's absurd to say that Allah has a leg just because he has a foot. That Muslims aren't allowed to believe that. So
Yeah.
hey, I'm just
And
trying to
why
be
is he?
respectful here.
Yeah, and there's a crescent. Hold on, actually, you know what? There's a crescent moon next to the Kaaba, and if you zoom out, you'll find the sun disk surrounds the Kaaba. You've got the sun disk surrounding the Kaaba. You have the crescent moon literally right next to the Kaaba. Crescent moon, sun, and the people are the stars. It's, you know, right is not a direction. You guys don't even know Semitic language. Allah has two right sides. So, I mean, this is just distractions. He's just trying to make you go off on a tangent, right? John Week, you should come on and talk to us about the Islamic doctrine of lying because it is obligatory for you to lie. It is not only wajib, right? It's not only halal, it's wajib. You must lie to us. You have no choice to defend Islam but to lie blatantly. And you do. So you should come and talk to us about that from the Sharia. It will be very interesting for you to explain to us exactly why this is part and parcel of Islamic law. That the religion of truth has entire chapters on how to lie to others.
And my actual point of bringing John Wick up was to show that he's been listening this whole time and did not have any response to anything we said. He disputed a couple words here and there, but he didn't have any really substantial replies. And then the second someone brings up something that allows him to attack Christianity, boom, he's attacking it. So it seems his confidence in Islam is based on his silly polemics against Christianity, and that he doesn't actually have any reason to believe in Islam, which is what I tend to see from all Muslims who respond in comments on YouTube, at least.
Nice is waffling. There is no direction. Yemen derives from Amen, which is to believe. Yemen means south. In fact, Yemen is an anagram of enemy. We've already discussed that. So, seriously, this John weak. I mean, this is weak, dude. Now this is weak. This is crazy.
Absolutely. John Weak, indeed.
Yeah, Jason Boring and John Weak. We know you're the same guy, buddy. We know.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you all for joining us today. I hope to have a new scripted video out this week. I will not give any hint about what that's about because it's a surprise. But I also plan to be on Ask Truth's channel. I believe Thursday we will do that. I'll be looking at a Zakir Naik video where he says that, where he gives his reason, if you can call it for that, why the Quran couldn't possibly be copied from the Bible. Him ignoring, of course, that it's actually copied from non-biblical sources for the most part. But he gives his reasons why the Quran couldn't be copied, and I'll go through those and see if they make any sense. Anything you'd like to announce, Lloyd?
The Bible, so the Quran is massively copied from Gnostic sources, Gnostic and heretical sources, as well as folk tales of the Jews and Christians. It's folk tales and Gnosticism. I mean, so yeah, it's definitely not taken from the Bible. It's taken from heretics. So yeah, it's very odd. But yeah, now that should be fun. I'll probably be in the chat when that happens.
Absolutely. And Villainous said that I need to get organized for mine too. He is planning on making a video. He's been thinking about it for a while, so we will pray for Villainous to actually go through with that and make that comment, that video, get involved in apologetics and polemics in a more direct way than commenting. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great week, and God bless.
Oh, Alfonso Harris just popped up.
Oh man! Right as we're saying goodbye, he switches from John Wick to Alonzo to try to make it look like more people are saying the same thing, but we're not.
He has no friends. Think of this guy has no friends, and he's only validated by people. No one believes you. Nobody believes you, buddy. Nobody. You've never convinced anybody. You have no friends. You have no life. You're here on YouTube 19 hours a day.
All right.
So anyway, good night, guys. God bless.
God bless.